The night was heavy with silence. Alexandria lay, cloaked under a blanket of darkness, the hum of the city having faded long ago. Somewhere along the Nile, candlelight flickered through a narrow chamber, casting shadows that danced like ghosts along stone walls. Within that chamber, centuries before the world would call her the last pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra lived. Or perhaps more accurately, she kept a secret. Her name is etched into history as one of the most fascinating rulers to have ever lived. Cleopatra VII, queen, seductress, diplomat, strategist. A woman who walked between empires, weaving alliances with Rome's most powerful men. Yet the story told in dusty textbooks is incomplete. It is a story shaped by centuries of translation, interpretation, and omission. Behind the familiar image lies a far deeper mystery, one that Egyptologists, historians, and even archaeologists have hesitated to speak aloud. What if Cleopatra's true legacy was not simply her reign, her relationships, or even her dramatic final moments? What if her most important inheritance was something hidden in her bloodline, a lineage that no history book has dared to reveal? The whisper begins here. It begins not in grand halls or battlefields, but in fragments of evidence scattered across time, in ancient scrolls lost to the ages, in inscriptions faded beyond recognition, in myths buried beneath layers of political rewriting. These fragments hint at a possibility that has long been dismissed by mainstream scholarship, that Cleopatra's ancestry was not purely Macedonian Greek, as tradition teaches, but perhaps intertwined with a lineage far older and far more sacred, a line that may have been intentionally erased. History remembers Cleopatra as a queen of charisma and ambition, a woman who commanded armies, courted emperors, and defied Rome. Yet there are gaps, silences, in her story that have never been filled. Records from her own dynasty are sparse, and much of what survives comes from Roman sources that had little interest in preserving her truth. They wrote of her beauty, her charm, and her downfall, but seldom of her origins. The possibility of hidden heritage was not just ignored, it was erased. Imagine Alexandria at the height of Cleopatra's reign. The great harbor glistening under the Mediterranean sun. Scholars debating philosophy in a library. Priests whispering rituals in temples dedicated to Isis. Merchants selling spices and papyrus. And somewhere in the shadows of this city, a queen walked with secrets in her mind. Not only secrets of statecraft, but secrets of blood. For centuries, Cleopatra's life has been shaped by myths. The tale of the beautiful seductress who swayed Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. The image of a doomed lover who chose death over conquest. But those stories are a veneer. Beneath them lies a darker question. Who was Cleopatra before the crown? Who were her ancestors before history named them? And why would those names be deliberately hidden? Modern historians point to gaps in the genealogical records of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The dynasty itself, established after Alexander the Great's conquest of Egypt, was no stranger to secrecy. Marriages between siblings, claims of divine descent, and a careful control of information were all part of its rule. Cleopatra was no exception. She inherited not just a throne, but a dynasty that had mastered the art of shaping history and erasing parts of it. This is where our story begins, at the edge of certainty, in the space between what is known and what has been silenced. Over the course of centuries, historians have pieced together fragments of Cleopatra's life, but the lineage of the last pharaoh remains one of the greatest mysteries of antiquity. Could it be that the most significant truth about Cleopatra was never meant to be found? That her bloodline itself was deliberately obscured? A truth too dangerous for the world to know? We will begin with a whisper, but the story will grow louder. It will take us through lost tombs, forgotten manuscripts, and the ruins of Alexandria. It will reveal betrayals, alliances, and conspiracies stretching back centuries. And in the end, it will pose a question that is more than a historical curiosity. What if the story of Cleopatra's bloodline changes everything we think we know about her and about history itself? Tonight, the veil begins to lift. The candle burns low, the scroll lies open. Somewhere in the shadows of time, a queen's whisper still echoes, and it may be calling us to listen. For centuries, the name Cleopatra has been wrapped in legend. But legends are not history. They are stories shaped by those who record them, and by those who choose what to forget. To understand Cleopatra's hidden lineage, we must first look at the enigma of Egyptology itself, the discipline that studies her world but has its own shadows. Egyptology is not simply the study of ancient Egypt. It is a story of discovery and loss, of archaeology and politics, of interpretation and omission. For centuries, the way Cleopatra's life has been told was not purely determined by evidence, but by cultural power. The people writing history were rarely Egyptian, rarely neutral, and rarely free from their own agendas. In the 19th century, when Western explorers first excavated the ruins of Alexandria, they brought with them not just tools and notebooks, but assumptions. Cleopatra was interpreted through the lens of Roman propaganda, Greek scholarship, and Victorian fascination. Her life became a narrative shaped as much by the desires of those telling it as by the fragments of truth they found. And in that telling, certain parts of her story began to fade. The gaps in the record are not accidental. Many ancient documents, inscriptions, and artifacts have vanished, lost to time, but also to destruction. Some were destroyed during wars. Others were deliberately erased by later rulers who sought to rewrite history. Cleopatra herself ruled in a time when truth was a weapon. Her dynasty controlled what could be recorded, but it could not control what Rome would write after her death. And Rome had its own reasons to shape her image. Roman historians painted Cleopatra as a temptress and a seductress, a queen who used beauty to manipulate great men. They stripped her of her political genius and her royal legacy. They wrote her story in terms of scandal and romance, not ancestry or dynastic truth. Those omissions matter, because if her bloodline was exceptional in ways Rome could not admit, it would explain why so little reliable information survived. Egyptology faces another enigma, the Ptolemaic dynasty itself. Cleopatra was the last of a line that began with Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals. They ruled Egypt as a Greek dynasty for centuries, marrying within their family to preserve power. But even the Ptolemies were secretive about their origins and their claims to divine heritage. In that secrecy lies the possibility that Cleopatra's lineage was not purely Macedonian, and that the truth was deliberately concealed. Modern Egyptologists have debated this for decades. Some dismiss it as speculation. Others see the gaps in the record as clues. There are whispers of lost manuscripts, unexplored tombs, and evidence buried deep in temple inscriptions. But archaeology is not neutral. Excavations depend on funding, politics, and what is considered important to study. Cleopatra's Alexandria, destroyed in war and looted over centuries, remains a place of mystery. And here lies the Egyptology enigma. The discipline that could answer the question of Cleopatra's lineage is itself shaped by human choice. What is preserved, what is studied, what is published, all are influenced by culture, politics, and sometimes secrecy. That means history is never complete. What we call history is only the version that survives. And survival depends on those in power. That brings us to the heart of the mystery. If Cleopatra's lineage contained something extraordinary, a link to ancient priesthoods, sacred bloodlines, or even forgotten dynasties, could it have been deliberately erased? Could her story have been shaped not just by conquest and politics, but by a centuries-long silence? The more scholars dig, the more questions emerge. Why are there no surviving records of certain branches of Cleopatra's family? Why are some genealogies incomplete or contradictory? Why did certain tombs disappear without explanation? These are not accidental gaps. They are signs of a puzzle that has been deliberately left unsolved. To solve this puzzle, we must approach it like a detective, not merely reading history, but questioning it. We must consider not only what Egyptology tells us, but also what it does not. We must understand that every stone uncovered, every fragment deciphered, every ancient record consulted comes with the weight of human intention. This is the challenge that lies ahead in our journey. To find Cleopatra's hidden lineage, we must first confront the enigma of Egyptology itself. Only by understanding the forces that shaped her story can we hope to peel away centuries of silence. And what we discover may not just rewrite Cleopatra's history. It may rewrite our understanding of history itself. As we move forward, we will leave the academic halls and enter the world of Alexandria itself, a world of shadows, whispers, and secrets carved in stone. This is where the real story begins, and where the first clues to Cleopatra's hidden bloodline begin to emerge. The Egyptology enigma is not just a question of what happened long ago. It is a question of what we are allowed to know. And that question will follow us as we move deeper into the labyrinth of Cleopatra's history. Alexandria was not just a city. It was a living enigma, a jewel carved on the edge of the Mediterranean, a place where knowledge, power, and mystery intertwined. To walk its streets in Cleopatra's time was to step into a world unlike any other, a world of light and shadow, where every stone seemed to whisper secrets of empire and blood. The city rose from the sands at the command of Alexander the Great, a dream of blending Greek brilliance with Egyptian grandeur. Its grid-like streets, lined with colonnades, temples, libraries, and markets, became a stage for history itself. Alexandria was a place where scholars debated philosophy, merchants traded treasures from every corner of the known world, and priests guarded knowledge older than the pyramids. But there was another side to Alexandria, a shadow that ran deeper than the Nile and darker than the vaults of the Great Library. That shadow was secrecy. Beneath the grandeur, behind the politics, there lay hidden corridors of power, whispers of forbidden knowledge, and perhaps even a guarded bloodline. Cleopatra lived in those shadows. Her Alexandria was not merely a capital city. It was the heart of her dynasty, the seat of her power, and the stage of her ambition. But it was also a labyrinth, a place where history was written in layers and truth was buried beneath interpretation. To understand Cleopatra, we must step into those hidden corners and ask, what lay behind the glitter of her court? The city itself was a political theater. Alexandria's harbor bustled with trade, its docks heavy with goods from across the Mediterranean. Yet within its walls, intrigue was the currency of power. Cleopatra navigated a web of alliances and rivalries not only with foreign powers, but within her own family. Her reign was born from a court rife with betrayal, where siblings became rivals and blood became a weapon. The Ptolemaic dynasty ruled Alexandria with a mix of spectacle and secrecy. They were masters of image, blending Hellenistic grandeur with Egyptian religious tradition. Cleopatra herself embraced this dual identity, portraying herself as both the Greek queen and the living embodiment of the Egyptian goddess Isis. But there was something more concealed beneath her public image, something so delicate and so dangerous that could not be spoken aloud. Some scholars suggest this hidden element may have been her lineage itself. Cleopatra was the last of her dynasty, but her ancestry was more than a matter of royal genealogy. It may have been a carefully guarded secret, a truth kept in shadows because it challenged not only the historical record, but the legitimacy of those who followed her story. Alexandria's shadow was not merely metaphorical. It was real. Over centuries, wars, earthquakes, fires, and plundering erased much of the city Cleopatra knew. Temples were destroyed, libraries burned, records lost. The Great Library, a place that may have held the answers to her lineage, disappeared into history's deepest silence. What remained was a city of fragments, where every discovery raised more questions than answers. Archaeologists who walk the ruins of Alexandria today speak of an uncanny presence, a sense that the city itself still holds its secrets close. Beneath the foundations of modern streets lie layers of the ancient metropolis, each layer containing traces of power, religion, and perhaps even hidden truth. Some of these traces hint at a story the world has never been told, a story that begins in Cleopatra's time and may have been deliberately erased. There's a reason Alexandria has become synonymous with mystery. It was a city that existed at the crossroads of cultures and empires, a place where Greek philosophy met Egyptian ritual, and where politics and religion were inseparable. For Cleopatra, Alexandria was not just her home. It was the crucible in which her identity, her power, and perhaps her secret lineage were forged. The court of Alexandria was a stage of endless performance. Cleopatra moved through it with skill. A queen who spoke many languages, who understood the politics of Rome and the traditions of Egypt. Her reign was as much about symbolism as power. Every gesture, every proclamation, every coin minted with her image was a calculated act of political theater. But behind the theater lay the reality of survival, the survival of her dynasty, and perhaps the survival of something even more profound. This is the shadow of Alexandria, a place where history was written in public spectacles, but where some truths were written only in silence. Cleopatra's life was lived in this tension between revelation and concealment. And the deeper we look into Alexandria's past, the more we see that her reign was about more than political ambition. It was about guarding something hidden. What was this hidden truth? It could have been a political alliance, a sacred relic, or perhaps the memory of a bloodline that the world was never meant to know. To understand, we must move beyond the grandeur of Alexandria into the fragments left behind, fragments buried beneath centuries of dust, destruction, and deliberate forgetting. In the coming sections of this story, we will follow those fragments. We will trace Cleopatra's footsteps through a city of light and shadow, seeking the hidden lineage that may still echo in history. Alexandria was her crown, but within its shadow lay her secret. The city that bore her name now stands as both a monument and a mystery. To walk its ruins is to walk between worlds, the world of history as we know it, and the shadowed world of what may have been. And in that shadow lies the first clue to a story that has been waiting to be told for over 2,000 years. The shadow of Alexandria is not just the story of a city. It is the story of Cleopatra herself, a queen who lived in the light, but whose greatest truths may have been kept in darkness. Beneath the glittering surface of Cleopatra's Alexandria lay a dynasty built on secrets. The Ptolemies were rulers of Egypt not by birthright alone, but by an intricate weaving of politics, marriage, religion, and secrecy. To understand Cleopatra, we must first understand the house from which she came, a house that knew the power of concealment. The Ptolemaic dynasty began with Ptolemy Isoter, one of Alexander the Great's generals. When Alexander died in 323 BCE, his empire was divided, and Ptolemy seized Egypt. From that moment, the Ptolemies set themselves apart. They ruled a land older than memory, a civilization whose traditions they both adopted and manipulated. To rule Egypt, they embraced the role of pharaohs, adopting its gods, rituals, and symbols. But they preserved their own Greek identity. This blending of cultures was not accidental. It was a calculated performance designed to strengthen their claim to the throne. The Ptolemies presented themselves as both divine rulers and pragmatic strategists, weaving religion and politics into a single, unbreakable fabric. And yet, beneath the grandeur of their rule, there was a web of secrecy about their origins. Marriage was one of their greatest tools. To consolidate power, Ptolemies frequently married within the family, often siblings or close relatives. This was not merely a tradition. It was a political strategy to keep power in their bloodline, but it also created a dynasty shrouded in mystery. Over generations, the family tree became tangled, and records grew contradictory. Cleopatra inherited this legacy of secrecy. She was not just a ruler. She was the last living heir to a dynasty that had long mastered the art of guarding its truth. Her ancestry was a puzzle, part Greek, part Egyptian, part mystery. Official records describe her as a Macedonian Greek, yet whispers in ancient texts suggest something more complex. Some scholars believe her lineage may have intertwined with Egyptian priesthoods or older dynasties, bloodlines so sacred that their existence could not be admitted openly. This secrecy extended beyond marriage and genealogy. The Ptolemies were skilled at controlling history itself. They commissioned works of art and inscriptions designed to portray their rule in a certain light. They curated what was recorded, what was celebrated, and what was quietly erased. Cleopatra, as the last queen of this line, inherited not just the throne, but a legacy of control over the story of her family. For Cleopatra, secrecy was both a shield and a weapon. She ruled in a world where knowledge was power and where information could be as valuable as armies. The truth of her lineage, if it differed from the official record, was a truth that could alter the foundations of her rule. To reveal it might have meant weakening her claim to power or inviting rivals to challenge her throne. The secrecy of her dynasty was not confined to her lifetime. Even after her death, the story of the Ptolemies was reshaped by Rome. The victors wrote history in their own image. Cleopatra was remembered for her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, not for the blood she carried. And in the centuries that followed, her family's deeper secrets sank further into silence. This is why the idea of a dynasty of secrets is more than speculation. It is a necessary piece of the puzzle if we are to understand Cleopatra. Her reign was the culmination of centuries of concealment, a rule built on controlling not only the present but the past. If there was truth in the whispers of a hidden lineage, it would not have been something she revealed openly. It would have been protected, spoken only in the shadows of the royal court. In the temples of Alexandria, in the hidden scrolls of the library, in the rituals of the priesthood, these may have been the places where such secrets were preserved. But the destruction of the library and the loss of countless records mean that we now search for that truth in fragments. Every surviving artifact, every disputed genealogy, every unexplained absence in the historical record becomes a clue. To follow these clues is to enter a labyrinth. The Ptolemaic dynasty left behind a trail of power and mystery, a web of hidden alliances and erased histories. Cleopatra, as its last ruler, stood at the center of that labyrinth. She inherited not just the crown of Egypt, but a dynasty built on silence. And in that silence may lie the most important secret of all, the true story of her bloodline. This dynasty of secrets is not just a chapter of the past. It is the key to understanding why Cleopatra's story is still shrouded in mystery today. The deeper we look, the more we see that her reign was about more than politics or beauty. It was about guarding something precious, something that could be lost forever if revealed. As we move deeper into her story, we must follow that thread. We must ask not just who Cleopatra was, but who her ancestors were and why their story was hidden. This is the beginning of our journey into the heart of a mystery that has endured for more than 2,000 years. The mystery of Cleopatra's hidden lineage. The dynasty of secrets was her inheritance, and it was her destiny to carry it to the end. The idea of a hidden bloodline is one of history's most tantalizing mysteries, and in Cleopatra's case, it may not be mere speculation. For centuries, her ancestry has been simplified in history books. Macedonian Greek through the Ptolemies, descended from Ptolemy Isoter, a general of Alexander the Great. But the truth may be far more complex and far more significant. The Ptolemaic dynasty was a lineage built on power, and power is preserved in blood. For Cleopatra, her ancestry was not only a matter of heritage, but also of legitimacy. To rule Egypt required more than force. It required a claim that resonated with the people. That claim may have been the lineage she guarded so carefully, a lineage that could have linked her not just to Macedonian royalty, but to something far older. Some historians have begun to ask questions that were once considered taboo. Could Cleopatra's bloodline have included descendants of Egypt's ancient priesthoods? Could it have tied her to dynasties older than the Ptolemies themselves? Dynasties that carried religious authority as well as royal power? The idea may sound speculative, but there are hints scattered across history. In temple inscriptions, certain symbols reappear alongside Cleopatra's name, symbols associated with divine rulership and sacred ancestry. These symbols were not part of ordinary propaganda. They were coded signs understood by a select few, possibly pointing to a lineage hidden from the public eye. If Cleopatra truly claimed such a lineage, it would explain much of her political and religious strategy. Cleopatra was not merely a queen of politics. She was a queen of ceremony. Her life was a constant performance, and her identity was a carefully crafted narrative. To her subjects, she presented herself as the living embodiment of Isis, the goddess of life, magic, and the Nile. That claim was more than symbolic. In ancient Egypt, claiming divine ancestry was a claim to legitimacy, a claim that could be preserved and protected in secrecy. There are also whispers in ancient texts suggesting that Cleopatra's family may have engaged in alliances with Egyptian priesthoods, alliances that would have deepened their claim to power and connected them to Egypt's most sacred traditions. These alliances would have been kept hidden, not only because they threatened foreign powers, but because they represented knowledge too dangerous for common ears. The destruction of records in Alexandria, particularly the loss of the Great Library, leaves us with a puzzle missing crucial pieces. Many of the texts that might have confirmed or denied these claims are gone. What remains are fragments, references in later writers, scattered inscriptions, and subtle clues embedded in art and architecture. These fragments form a trail, faint but persistent, that points toward the possibility of a hidden bloodline. Genetic research in the modern era offers tantalizing possibilities, though it has yet to solve the mystery. DNA could one day reveal truths buried for millennia. But even without such proof, The circumstantial evidence is compelling. Cleopatra's life, her alliances, and the symbols she chose to surround herself with suggest a queen aware of her heritage and determined to guard it. This hidden lineage, if it existed, was more than personal heritage. It was a living legacy. Cleopatra's bloodline could have carried not only political power, but also spiritual significance, a link to traditions that predated her dynasty by centuries. Such a lineage would not be written plainly in history. It would be encoded in ceremony, myth, and silence. And silence is exactly what we find. The record of Cleopatra's ancestry is not straightforward. There are contradictions, omissions, and deliberate erasures. Some historians argue that these gaps were the result of destruction over time. Others suggest something more deliberate, that her lineage was obscured because it was too important to be revealed. The notion of hidden bloodlines is not new in history. Many royal families have concealed their origins to protect their claims to the throne. But in Cleopatra's case, the stakes would have been extraordinary. Her lineage was not just a matter of dynastic pride. It was potentially a secret that could reshape the way we understand her reign, her politics, and her very identity. If Cleopatra carried such a secret, it would explain much about her life. Her political marriages, her alliances with Rome, her embrace of religious symbolism, all could have been part of a strategy to protect and perpetuate her bloodline. In that light, her reign was not simply the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, but the culmination of centuries of careful concealment. This is why the search for Cleopatra's hidden bloodline is more than an academic exercise. It is a journey into the heart of history itself, into the spaces where fact and legend intertwine. Every clue we uncover, every inscription, every fragment, every symbol becomes a key to unlocking a truth that has been deliberately kept from us. And the question lingers, why would a bloodline of such importance be hidden? The answer may lie in power itself. In Cleopatra's time, power was not just in armies or wealth. It was in who you were and whose blood you carried. To protect a bloodline was to protect a claim to the throne, a legacy, and perhaps even a destiny. The possibility of a hidden lineage transforms Cleopatra's story. It shifts her from being a figure of romance and politics into a guardian of something far greater, a secret that may have shaped the fate of Egypt itself. Our journey into Cleopatra's past will take us deeper into this mystery. We will explore the fragments of evidence that survive, the whispers of ancient sources, and the possibilities hidden in Alexandria's ruins. Each step will bring us closer to understanding not only who Cleopatra was, but what she carried within her blood, and why the world may never have been meant to know. The hidden bloodline is the thread that runs beneath Cleopatra's story. Pulling it reveals a tapestry of history woven in shadows. And it is this tapestry that we are now beginning to unravel. History is written by those who survive. But what happens when the survivors choose to keep certain truths buried? The story of Cleopatra is not just a tale of queens and empires. It is a story of silences, of scrolls that vanished, records that were destroyed, and truths erased. These silences are the whispers we must listen to, for they may conceal the heart of her mystery. In Cleopatra's time, knowledge was power. Scrolls, manuscripts, inscriptions, they were not mere documents. They were treasures, carriers of truth, authority, and legitimacy. To control them was to control history itself. And in Alexandria, the great heart of knowledge, this control was absolute. The city's famed library was the world's greatest archive, a place where the wisdom of centuries was gathered. Yet much of it is lost to us forever. The loss of the Library of Alexandria is one of history's great tragedies. It is said that countless scrolls, perhaps the entire record of ancient Egypt, were consumed by fire, by conquest, by neglect. Among those lost may have been records of Cleopatra's lineage, official genealogies of the Ptolemies, and sacred texts that could illuminate the truth of her bloodline. The silences in her history may be the result of these losses, or they may have been deliberate. There are reasons to believe that some scrolls were destroyed intentionally. Political rivals, conquerors, and even later rulers often erased records that threatened their own legitimacy. For Cleopatra, whose reign challenged Rome and whose bloodline may have carried sacred significance, silence could have been the greatest weapon used against her. Erasing certain documents would erase claims she could make, truths she could reveal. Even today, fragments survive. References in Greek and Roman accounts hint at documents that once existed but are no longer available. Some inscriptions survive only in partial form, leaving gaps that invite speculation. Archaeologists find small fragments of scrolls, pieces of papyrus, or broken inscriptions that resist easy interpretation. These fragments are the remnants of a greater whole, and in their gaps lies mystery. The scrolls of silence extend beyond Alexandria's ruins. Libraries in other ancient cities, private collections of scholars, and temples across Egypt have yielded fragments of information, often contradictory, always incomplete. These fragments tell stories, but they also point to what has been erased. They hint that Cleopatra's lineage and the history of her dynasty may have been subjects deemed too dangerous to preserve. The destruction of knowledge in Alexandria was not an accident of time alone. It was shaped by conquest. Julius Caesar's siege, later Roman campaigns, and the gradual decline of the city meant that archives vanished, sometimes deliberately. What was left behind was filtered through the perspective of conquerors. Rome had no interest in preserving the full story of the last pharaoh. Cleopatra was remembered for her beauty, her romance with Caesar and Antony, her dramatic death, but not for her ancestry or the secrets she may have carried. The very absence of records becomes part of the mystery. Every gap, every lost scroll is a question mark. Why were certain histories preserved while others were destroyed? What truths were deemed too dangerous to survive? For Cleopatra, these silences are a shadow cast across her legacy. They suggest a deliberate erasure of something significant, something her enemies feared. Some scholars believe that the scrolls of silence may have contained evidence of a hidden lineage, a genealogy that linked Cleopatra to a sacred past. Others argue that they may have included political decrees, religious knowledge, or treaties that were never meant for public eyes. Whatever their content, their loss shapes the story we have today, a story with gaps that speak as loudly as the words we do possess. To follow these silences is to become a seeker of lost truth. It is to read between the lines of history, to see what has been hidden rather than what has been written. The scrolls that vanished are not simply documents lost to time. They are pieces of a larger puzzle, pieces that could change how we understand Cleopatra, her dynasty, and perhaps even Egypt itself. The silence extends into the present. Modern Egyptology, powerful though it is still shaped by what has survived. Excavations uncover fragments, but they cannot restore what was destroyed. The story of Cleopatra's lineage is written in the spaces between discoveries, in the absence as much as in the evidence. And those absences speak of a secret preserved in silence. This is why the scrolls matter. They were not only records of knowledge, they were guardians of memory. To lose them is to lose history itself. For Cleopatra, the loss of records may have been both tragedy and protection. If her lineage carried a truth that threatened powerful empires, then silence may have been the only way it could survive, hidden in plain sight, protected by absence. Our journey now moves beyond scrolls and silence. To uncover Cleopatra's hidden lineage, we must turn to another language of history: stone. Temple walls, inscriptions, monuments. These survive where papyrus does not. They may hold the clues that scrolls once contained. In them, a story waits to be deciphered. The scrolls of silence are not the end of the search. They are a beginning. They tell us that the history of Cleopatra is not complete, that her story still lies hidden, waiting to be uncovered. And they warn us that what has been erased may be the most important truth of all. Stone lasts when words vanish. In the world of ancient Egypt, stone was not just material, it was memory. It was permanence. The temples, statues, and inscriptions left behind by the Ptolemaic dynasty were not mere monuments. They were declarations of power, identity, and legitimacy. For Cleopatra, stone was a language, one she spoke fluently. And in that language may lie the keys to her hidden lineage. The Ptolemies understood the power of imagery. They adorned temples with carvings that blended Greek artistry and Egyptian tradition. They erected statues portraying themselves not only as monarchs, but as gods. In these depictions, they controlled their legacy, embedding their authority in stone so that it would outlive generations. Cleopatra inherited this legacy of symbolism and secrecy. To her, every temple, every coin, every statue was part of a larger narrative, a story written in stone for the ages. Her portraits did not merely depict her likeness. They carried meaning. In the deliberate choices of iconography lay political and religious messages, and perhaps hints of a deeper truth. Symbols carved into stone could speak of ancestry, divine favor, and sacred bloodlines, truths that papyrus might conceal. One of the most striking features of Cleopatra's reign was her fusion of Egyptian religious tradition with her own political narrative. She portrayed herself as Isis incarnate, a goddess whose power was eternal. This was not mere flattery of her people. It was a strategic claim. In ancient Egypt, divine ancestry was a claim to legitimacy. To link oneself to a goddess was to claim not only the throne, but the sacred right to rule. Some historians have argued that this symbolism was purely political, but others suggest it may conceal something more profound. Could Cleopatra's use of divine imagery have been more than political theater? Could it have been a coded declaration of her hidden lineage, a lineage she could not openly proclaim? Stone was a language that transcended spoken word. Carved symbols could carry meanings intended only for those who knew where to look. Temples such as Philae and Dendera were more than places of worship. They were repositories of memory and history. Their walls hold inscriptions, reliefs, and hieroglyphs that outlast scrolls and manuscripts. Many of these inscriptions refer to dynastic origins, divine ancestry, and sacred traditions. Among these, some scholars believe there are subtle clues pointing to Cleopatra's concealed heritage. These clues, hidden in plain sight, are part of what makes Alexandria and its monuments so enigmatic. Coins are another form of stone language, small, portable monuments of power. Cleopatra's coins depict her with symbols that connect her to both Greek and Egyptian traditions. Some coins bear inscriptions and imagery that remain mysterious to this day, their meaning lost in the passage of centuries. Could they be deliberate markers of a hidden truth? Could they be whispers carved into metal, intended to survive when all else was destroyed? Cleopatra's architectural projects also speak to her mastery of stone as a medium of legacy. Her renovations of temples, her dedication of monuments, and her careful choice of sacred sites were acts of deliberate storytelling. Each stone placed, each relief carved, was a word and a narrative she controlled. That narrative was one of power, identity, and perhaps hidden ancestry. The language of stone is not always obvious. It requires interpretation, an understanding of symbolism, ritual, and history. For Cleopatra, this language was part of her reign strategy. She knew that stone endures where scrolls perish, and that inscriptions last when words are forgotten. To speak in stone was to speak to eternity. The destruction of much of Alexandria's monuments makes this language harder to read. Many of Cleopatra's buildings and statues were destroyed by war, conquest, and natural disaster. What remains are fragments that scholars painstakingly study, interpreting the meaning of each symbol, each carving. These fragments are part of the puzzle of her hidden lineage. Some of the most intriguing clues lie in temple inscriptions that refer to the divine right of the Ptolemies to rule Egypt. These inscriptions, though incomplete, suggest that the dynasty's claim to power rested on more than conquest. It rested on ancestry, sanctified by tradition. If Cleopatra was indeed the heir to such a sacred bloodline, her stone language would have been a way to proclaim it without speaking openly. This was the power of stone: permanence, secrecy, and subtlety. Stone could preserve a truth too dangerous to be written plainly. And for Cleopatra, whose reign was as much about guarding secrets as exercising power, stone may have been the safest place to speak them. The stone language of power is still being deciphered. Archaeologists and historians continue to study Cleopatra's surviving monuments, searching for patterns, symbols, and inscriptions that might reveal hidden meanings. Every discovery deepens the mystery, suggesting that Cleopatra's story is written not only in history books, but also in stone. The walls of Alexandria, the coins in ancient hoards, the reliefs of distant temples, they form a silent testimony. They speak in a language older than papyrus, older than Rome itself. And within that language may lie the truth of Cleopatra's hidden lineage. To follow this language is to follow the queen herself. It is to read her story as she intended it to be read, not in the noise of political propaganda, but in the quiet permanence of stone. And it is in that silence that the next chapter of our search begins. The stone language of power is not merely a historical curiosity. It is a key to understanding Cleopatra's reign, her identity, and the secrets she may have carried to the grave. And that key lies waiting in the shadows of Alexandria. In ancient Egypt, the priesthood was more than a religious institution. It was a vault of power, a guardian of secrets, and a keeper of knowledge that spanned millennia. The priests were not only interpreters of the divine, they were the stewards of history, tradition, and perhaps hidden bloodlines. For Cleopatra, the priesthood was both an ally and a mystery, a force that may have guarded the truth of her lineage. The Egyptian priesthood operated in a world where knowledge was sacred and secrecy was law. Temples were not only centers of worship, but repositories of hidden wisdom. Within their walls were scrolls and inscriptions detailing rituals, genealogies, and sacred traditions. Some of this knowledge was meant for the public, but much of it was reserved for the initiated. Knowledge passed from generation to generation in silence. Cleopatra's reign coincided with a time when the priesthood still held extraordinary influence. Although Egypt had been ruled by Greeks for centuries, its religious traditions remained deeply rooted. The Ptolemies embraced these traditions to legitimize their rule, presenting themselves as divine monarchs. Cleopatra went further, positioning herself as Isis incarnate, a living goddess. This was not simply a political gesture. It was a claim that tied her directly to the heart of Egypt's sacred tradition. Could this claim have been more than symbolism? Could it have been a coded statement of her bloodline? The priesthood guarded the secrets of divine ancestry, knowledge so powerful that revealing it could alter the balance of power. For Cleopatra, whose dynasty was both Greek and Egyptian, aligning herself with the priesthood was a way to strengthen her rule and perhaps to conceal a truth that was too dangerous to speak openly. The rituals of the Egyptian priesthood were complex and deeply symbolic. They preserved ancient knowledge through ceremonies that intertwined religion, politics, and genealogy. Initiates were taught to read the language of the gods, hieroglyphs, symbols, and rituals that encoded meaning far beyond the surface. If Cleopatra's lineage was part of this sacred knowledge, it would have been guarded in these rites, hidden behind layers of symbolism and secrecy. There is evidence to suggest that the Ptolemies engaged in special relationships with certain priestly orders. Temples such as Edfu, Dendera, and Philae contain inscriptions that speak of dynastic rituals and divine ancestry. While much of this remains subject to interpretation, scholars note patterns that hint at a deeper tradition, a tradition that Cleopatra may have inherited and protected. The secrecy of the priesthood extended beyond the temple walls. Knowledge was passed orally, through initiation, and was guarded jealously. This means that any record of Cleopatra's connection to such knowledge may never have been written down, or if it was, it may have been deliberately destroyed. The very nature of priestly secrecy is that it leaves no clear trace. It lives in silence. For Cleopatra, the priesthood was not just a religious institution. It was a partner in the language of power. Their support gave her legitimacy in the eyes of her people, and their traditions gave her reign a depth that went beyond politics. The rituals she embraced, the symbols she adopted, and the ceremonies she performed were part of a story told in the quiet language of the sacred. The destruction of much of Egypt's religious record means that this story is incomplete. Many temple inscriptions were lost over centuries of war, neglect, and conquest. Others survive only as fragments, leaving gaps in our understanding. But these gaps are themselves a clue. They point to the possibility that some knowledge was intentionally hidden, kept safe within the priesthood's silence. Could Cleopatra's hidden lineage have been such a secret? If so, it would explain much of her political strategy. Her embrace of Egyptian religion, her careful cultivation of image, and her alliance with Rome may have been part of a deliberate plan to protect something ancient and powerful, a truth that could not survive exposure. This possibility transforms our understanding of Cleopatra's reign. It suggests that her rule was not only a political struggle, but a guardianship. She may have been protecting not just a kingdom, but a lineage, a bloodline intertwined with the priesthood, preserved in ritual and secrecy. To search for that secret is to search within the very heart of Egypt's ancient religion. It is to study the surviving temples, to read the inscriptions, to interpret the symbolism, and to follow the traditions that the priesthood preserved. Each fragment of evidence becomes a thread in a larger tapestry, a tapestry that may contain the truth of Cleopatra's heritage. The priesthood's secret is part of the larger puzzle of Alexandria. It is a piece of history hidden in plain sight, encoded in rituals, symbols, and silence. To uncover it is to look beyond the written record, beyond scrolls and monuments, and into the living tradition of an ancient people. This journey takes us to the threshold of something extraordinary. It takes us to the point where history becomes mystery, where the silence of the priesthood may be the silence of something sacred. Cleopatra's alliance with the priesthood was not accidental. It was part of her reign's deepest strategy, a strategy that may have been designed to guard the secret of her bloodline. The priesthood's secret is not simply an academic theory. It is a possibility that transforms Cleopatra's story. It changes her from a queen remembered for romance and tragedy into a guardian of ancient knowledge, a queen whose legacy was shaped by silence. As we continue our journey, we will follow the trail of this silence. We will look for the echoes of priestly knowledge in Cleopatra's monuments, her rituals, and her alliances. And we will ask the question that has haunted historians for centuries. What was the priesthood's secret, and did Cleopatra guard it until her last breath? The priesthood's secret is a key chapter in the mystery of Cleopatra's hidden lineage. Unlocking it may bring us closer than ever to understanding not just who Cleopatra was, but what she carried within her blood, a secret that history has buried, but perhaps never truly forgotten. Alexandria was a city alive with whispers, the kind of whispers that linger long after voices have faded, whispers of secrets, conspiracies, and truths that could change history. In Cleopatra's time, those whispers were more than gossip. They were threads of hidden knowledge, carried through the corridors of the palace, the markets, and the sacred precincts. They spoke of power, lineage, and a legacy the world was not meant to know. The streets of Alexandria were unlike any in the ancient world. They were filled with a mixture of languages, Greek, Egyptian, Hebrew, Latin, and with voices from every corner of the Mediterranean. Merchants bargained over spices and silks, philosophers debated under colonnades, priests chanted in hidden chambers, and courtiers whispered behind closed doors. In this blend of sound and shadow, whispers were currency. For Cleopatra, whispers were both threat and opportunity. As queen, she knew that power was fragile. The stability of her reign depended not only on armies and alliances, but also on controlling the stories told in hushed tones. Some whispers served her, reinforcing her image as divine ruler and cunning strategist. Others were dangerous, hints of conspiracies, challenges to her authority, or rumors about her lineage. One such whisper was that of a hidden ancestry, a claim that Cleopatra herself may have cultivated. If her lineage contained something extraordinary, something sacred, it would have been a truth too dangerous to proclaim openly. Instead, it would have been kept in whispers, preserved in coded language, passed quietly among those who understood. The Palace of Alexandria was a heart of whispering. Within its gilded halls, power was negotiated in shadows. Courtiers and priests communicated in subtle signals. Advisors spoke in guarded tones, aware that even a slip of the tongue could alter the fate of a dynasty. Cleopatra mastered this language of silence, using it as much as her words. Every public speech, every gesture was calculated, but so too were the private whispers. Some whispers came from the priests. Alexandria's priesthood was a network of secrecy, safeguarding traditions older than the city itself. They held knowledge of rituals, sacred texts, and genealogies. For Cleopatra, maintaining their confidence was essential. Their whispers may have been the only confirmation of the lineage she protected. In them lay the possibility of a truth that could rewrite her story. But whispers could also be dangerous weapons. Rivals in her court, her own family members, foreign emissaries, Roman allies, knew the power of a whispered claim. A hint of scandal, a suggestion of illegitimacy, could destabilize a ruler. In such an environment, secrecy was survival. And Cleopatra, ever the strategist, learned to control the flow of whispers around her. Some historians believe that whispers in Alexandria were a deliberate form of political theater. In a city that was both a capital and a legend, rumors could be used as tools of influence. Cleopatra may have allowed certain whispers to spread, shaping them to serve her narrative. This was not mere manipulation. It was mastery of perception. Whispers, when controlled, could be as powerful as proclamations. The danger, of course, was that whispers were hard to control. They slipped through the cracks of palace walls, spread through the city's labyrinthine streets, and were carried on the tongues of strangers. The whisper of a hidden bloodline could spread like wildfire, becoming both a threat to her reign and a part of her mystique. For Cleopatra, the answer was not to silence all whispers, but to weave them into her own story. In doing so, she transformed whispers into legend. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony became not only political alliances, but part of a larger narrative, one that she shaped through both words and silence. To the people of Alexandria, these were not just alliances. They were acts in a drama where Cleopatra played both queen and goddess. And the whispers were part of that drama, subtle signs that her story was not fully told. Alexandria itself was a living archive of whispers. The city's marketplaces, temples, and libraries held echoes of conversations long past. Merchants remembered tales told by foreign traders. Priests remembered rites spoken only in private. Scribes recorded versions of history that conflicted with one another. These layers of memory formed a mosaic of hidden truths, fragments that could point toward Cleopatra's hidden lineage. The modern historian searching Alexandria's ruins is, in a sense, chasing whispers. Each fragment of inscription, each broken relief, each recovered scroll is a trace of those voices. But unlike spoken words, these traces endure. They become part of the puzzle we seek to solve. They tell us that Cleopatra's Alexandria was not just a place of grandeur, but a city where secrets lived in the air, in stone, and in silence. This is why whispers matter. They are the hidden language of history. They speak to what was not recorded, what was erased, and what was too dangerous to speak aloud. In Cleopatra's story, whispers are not incidental. They are central. They are the shadow side of her reign, the hidden dialogue that shaped her legacy. To follow these whispers is to follow Cleopatra herself into the labyrinth of history. It is to listen for what lies beneath the recorded words, to hear the unspoken truths hidden in Alexandria's stones and streets. And in those whispers may lie the answer to the mystery of her bloodline. The whispers of Alexandria are not lost. They are woven into the city's very soul. They survive in fragments of inscription, in the rituals of the priesthood, and in the enduring stories of the queen who ruled in the shadows. And they remind us that history is not just what is written, it is also what is quietly preserved in silence. As we move forward, we will follow these whispers deeper into Cleopatra's world. We will trace them through temples and scrolls, through stone and ritual, toward a truth that has been hidden for centuries. For in the whispers of Alexandria lies not just the story of a queen, but the possibility of a lineage kept secret for eternity. The death of Cleopatra was not only the end of a reign, it was the closing of a story shrouded in mystery. But her burial is a greater enigma still. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and adventurers have sought the final resting place of the last pharaoh of Egypt. Yet the tomb remains undiscovered, hidden beneath layers of history, silence, and perhaps deliberate concealment. Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE marked the collapse of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the transformation of Egypt into a Roman province. According to ancient accounts, she took her own life, an act that cemented her image in history as a tragic queen. Yet the question of where she was buried remains unresolved, and the silence surrounding her tomb is one of history's greatest riddles. According to the writings of Plutarch and Dio Cassius, Cleopatra's burial was a private affair, alongside Mark Antony. They were said to be interred in a tomb of grandeur befitting their station, yet the location was never recorded in detail. The secrecy of her final resting place has fueled centuries of speculation, with countless searches and theories emerging over time. Some historians suggest that her tomb lies somewhere in Alexandria, perhaps beneath the ruins of ancient temples or palaces. Others believe it may be hidden in the sands of Taposiris Magna, a temple complex that bears many clues linking it to the queen. Archaeological excavations have uncovered fragments, statues, inscriptions, and coins that hint at a burial site, but no definitive evidence has yet emerged. The secrecy of her burial may have been intentional. Cleopatra ruled in an age when burial was not merely a matter of resting the dead, but a statement of power, lineage, and legacy. Tombs were symbols of eternity, and for a queen who may have guarded a hidden bloodline, the choice of her burial site could have been part of a larger strategy to preserve a secret. Egyptian burial traditions placed great importance on the afterlife. The tomb was not simply a grave. It was a portal, a place where the soul continued its journey. For Cleopatra, her burial would have been steeped in ritual and symbolism, designed to ensure her passage and her legacy. It would have been a tomb built to speak for her, even in silence. Could her burial have contained clues to her hidden lineage? It is a question that has long intrigued scholars. In ancient Egypt, tombs often included inscriptions detailing ancestry and divine connections. If Cleopatra's bloodline contained something sacred, it may have been preserved in her final resting place, hidden in the symbolism of her tomb and sealed from view. The destruction of Alexandria has left us with fragments of her story. Fires, earthquakes, and centuries of urban development have erased much of the ancient city. If her tomb was in Alexandria, it may now lie buried beneath layers of modern streets. Yet those layers themselves are part of the enigma, a silent testimony to history's tendency to conceal as much as it reveals. The search for Cleopatra's burial has become part of her legend. Explorers have scoured Egypt for clues, and archaeologists have devoted lifetimes to uncovering what was lost. Each discovery, whether a fragment of sculpture, an inscription, or a coin, adds to the mystery rather than resolving it. The absence of certainty keeps her story alive, compelling new generations to seek answers. Some whispers speak of a tomb not found because it was hidden deliberately, protected by those who knew its significance. If Cleopatra carried a secret worth guarding, her burial could have been part of that guardianship. A tomb could serve as a final sanctuary for that truth, sealed away to endure for eternity. The burial enigma is not merely about finding a tomb. It is about what that tomb could contain. It is about the possibility that Cleopatra took her secret with her into the afterlife, a secret that may have been the true treasure of her reign. This transforms the search from an archaeological quest into a journey toward understanding the deeper story of Cleopatra's life and legacy. Our pursuit of her tomb is also a pursuit of closure. To discover it would not only be to find the resting place of a queen, but to open a door into a hidden chapter of history. It would be to confront the silence that has surrounded Cleopatra for centuries and to decide what that silence means. The burial enigma reminds us that history is not always written in monuments or scrolls. Sometimes it is buried in the earth, hidden beneath centuries of dust and time. And sometimes the greatest truths lie not in what has been found, but in what remains hidden. As we stand on the threshold of this mystery, we must ask ourselves, was Cleopatra's tomb meant to be discovered, or was it meant to remain a secret forever? The answer may lie buried in the sands of Egypt, waiting for those willing to look beyond history's silence. The enigma of her burial is not an end. It is another doorway, another whisper, another stone in the path toward uncovering Cleopatra's hidden lineage. And in that silence lies the next chapter of our journey. As fascination with crystal skulls deepened, the quest to uncover their hidden truths became a journey into overlapping realms of history, science, and speculation. For centuries, explorers, collectors, and researchers have attempted to piece together a coherent narrative, tracing origin, purpose, and meaning. Yet, despite every excavation, laboratory test, and scholarly study, the skulls continue to guard their secrets, revealing fragments while concealing the full story. The process of unraveling these truths is as revealing as the artifacts themselves, illuminating not only the mysteries of the skulls, but also the limits and nature of human understanding. The first layer of hidden truth lies in origin. While many skulls are attributed to Mesoamerican civilizations, such as the Maya or Aztec, evidence often contradicts these claims. Some skulls bear marks suggesting advanced techniques, inconsistent with known pre-Columbian tools. Others emerge in contexts disconnected from ancient sites, appearing in private collections without clear provenance. The challenge of tracing origin highlights the interplay between myth, documentation, and human intervention. Even a century of careful archaeological study leaves gaps, inviting speculation and opening the possibility that some skulls are not merely lost artifacts, but expressions of knowledge from a civilization whose methods we have yet to fully understand. Provenance, or the history of ownership, adds complexity. The movement of skulls across continents through trade, theft, or gift has often obscured origin while layering new narrative threads onto the artifacts. Each new owner contributes to the mythos, consciously or unconsciously, whether by documenting discovery, conducting experiments, or engaging in spiritual practice. These narratives intermingle with historical events, such as colonial expeditions, scientific exploration, and cultural exchange, creating a rich but tangled web. The hidden truths of the skulls cannot be separated from the human histories they intersect with. Their journey across time and space is itself a critical aspect of understanding. Scientific inquiry attempts to strip away legend in pursuit of empirical data. Techniques such as X-ray analysis, spectroscopy, and electron microscopy provide detailed insights into composition, carving marks, and material properties. Researchers have confirmed the remarkable quality of the crystal, its unusual internal structures, and the precision of its shaping. Yet even these objective measures reveal contradictions. Some skulls appear technologically impossible to carve with known tools, while others bear clear signs of modern fabrication. The hidden truth is thus partially revealed, partially obscured. The skulls invite interpretation while resisting conclusive categorization. The skull's symbolic and cultural significance further complicates uncovering hidden truths. Anthropologists note that human societies frequently assign power to objects, imbuing them with meaning, reverence, or fear. The crystal skulls exemplify this phenomenon, serving as vessels of human imagination, belief, and cultural projection. Beneath the grandeur of Alexandria, beneath the marble columns and the bustling streets, there may lie something unseen, hidden chambers that guard secrets as old as Cleopatra's reign itself. These are not merely physical spaces, but symbolic ones, repositories of truth, sanctuaries of knowledge, and perhaps the final refuge for the queen's deepest secret. The idea of hidden chambers has always fascinated historians. Ancient Egypt was a civilization built on concealment as much as revelation. Temples often contained secret sanctuaries, accessible only to the initiated. Tombs were built with hidden passages to protect the dead and their treasures. These chambers were both literal and symbolic spaces where knowledge could be preserved away from prying eyes. Cleopatra ruled in a world that understood the power of secrecy. Alexandria itself was a labyrinth, a city of mysteries. Beneath its great palaces and temples were vaults and passageways, some lost to time. Could Cleopatra have hidden something of great importance within these subterranean spaces? If so, what might it have been? A royal treasure? A document? Or perhaps the truth of her lineage? The very architecture of the Ptolemaic period suggests such possibility. Temples like the Serapeum, sacred to the Greco-Egyptian god Serapis, were built with hidden spaces. These chambers often contained scrolls, relics, and sacred objects, guarded by priests sworn to secrecy. The presence of these hidden chambers speaks to a culture that valued protection of knowledge above all. For Cleopatra, whose reign was both political and sacred, hidden chambers could have been the ultimate safeguard. If she possessed knowledge about her ancestry that could shift the course of history, she would have had every reason to conceal it. The chambers beneath her city could have been a sanctuary for that secret, a place shielded from Rome, from rivals, and from the passage of time. There are tantalizing clues in the surviving remains of Alexandria. Archaeologists have uncovered underground passages, vaults, and structures whose purpose remains uncertain. Some suggest these were storage spaces. Others believe they were sanctuaries. Among them, certain chambers stand out as possible repositories of secrets tied to the Ptolemaic line. But no definitive evidence has yet emerged. The idea of hidden chambers also resonates in legend. Stories passed down through the centuries speak of secret rooms beneath the royal palace, rooms that no living person has ever seen. These tales are often dismissed as myth, yet they persist, a sign that the idea of concealment is part of Cleopatra's enduring mystique. Hidden chambers are not just physical spaces. They are metaphors for the hidden layers of history itself. Cleopatra's reign was filled with acts of concealment, political maneuvers kept from public view, alliances forged in secrecy, and symbols that spoke only to those initiated in their meaning. The hidden chambers of Alexandria may have been the physical embodiment of that secrecy. If Cleopatra's lineage was indeed a truth too dangerous to speak aloud, then those chambers could have been a vault for her secret. They might have contained scrolls documenting her ancestry, sacred relics confirming her divine claim, or inscriptions written in a symbolic language only the priesthood could interpret. Such a discovery would transform our understanding of her reign. The challenge is that these chambers, if they exist, are elusive. Alexandria has been destroyed and rebuilt countless times over the centuries. Earthquakes, invasions, and urban development have buried much of the ancient city beneath layers of history. The entrances to such chambers could lie hidden under modern streets, forgotten by time and memory. Archaeology has made remarkable discoveries in Alexandria, but the city remains largely unexplored underground. Each excavation brings tantalizing hints, fragments that speak of something greater beneath the surface. These discoveries fuel the imagination and deepen the mystery of Cleopatra's hidden chambers. For those who search for history, the possibility of hidden chambers is irresistible. It offers not just the promise of discovery, but the chance to touch something sacred and secret. It is the hope that beneath the dust of centuries lies a chamber that holds the lost voice of a queen who ruled in shadow. The hidden chambers could be the last sanctuary of Cleopatra's truth. They could be where her story was sealed away, protected by stone, silence, and time. To find them would be to step into a lost world, a world where history and legend converge. And even if such chambers remain forever undiscovered, their possibility shapes how we understand Cleopatra's legacy. They remind us that history is not merely what survives in monuments and scrolls, but also what is hidden, concealed, and protected. The chambers are a symbol of the deeper mystery that surrounds her life and lineage. The hidden chambers invite us to look beyond the surface of history. They urge us to question what we think we know and to seek the truths that lie buried in silence. For Cleopatra, they may have been the ultimate safeguard, a place where the most precious secret of her reign could endure beyond the reach of time. As our journey moves forward, the hidden chambers are a threshold we must cross. They lead us deeper into Cleopatra's world, a world of mystery, power, and a lineage that may have been kept secret for eternity. And beyond them lies the next chapter of our search. The idea of a bloodline codex feels like something out of legend, a hidden manuscript containing the truth of ancestry, a secret so powerful that it could change the course of history. For Cleopatra, such a codex may have been more than a myth. It could have been the key to her claim as both queen and goddess, a record of lineage preserved in secrecy by the priesthood of Egypt. In the ancient world, bloodlines were not mere genealogy. They were proof of divine right. Pharaohs claimed descent from gods, and their ancestry was intertwined with religion, politics, and identity. For Cleopatra, whose reign was at the intersection of Greek heritage and Egyptian tradition, lineage was central. Her bloodline was her claim to legitimacy, and perhaps something far deeper. The Bloodline Codex, if it existed, would have been no ordinary document. It would have been written in code, in the sacred language of the priesthood. Hieroglyphs, symbolic imagery, and ritual inscriptions would have concealed its truths, making them accessible only to those initiated into Egypt's deepest mysteries. The Codex would have been both history and magic, a living testament to her claim. There are whispers among scholars that fragments of such codices survive in Egypt's temples. Inscriptions in Dendera, Philae, and Edfu speak of divine ancestry, of kings and queens chosen by the gods. These texts were not meant for public reading. They were safeguarded by the priesthood, guarded in secrecy. If Cleopatra's lineage was part of this sacred record, it may have been preserved in the same manner. The concept of a codex was not foreign to the ancient world. Alexandria itself was home to the greatest library in history, a place where knowledge was preserved in scrolls. Yet the idea of a codex, a compact, secret book, suggests something even more deliberate. It suggests a record created for concealment as much as preservation, a codex that could survive time while hiding its truth. Why would Cleopatra guard such a codex? Because her lineage, if revealed, could have altered everything. It could have confirmed her divine claim, secured her throne, and reshaped the politics of her time. But it could also have been dangerous. Bloodlines carry power, and power invites challenge. To protect such knowledge, secrecy would have been essential. This is where the priesthood comes into the story. They were the keepers of sacred knowledge, the interpreters of divine will. For centuries, they preserved traditions in temples and secret chambers. The Bloodline Codex, if it existed, would have been their most guarded treasure, a record of ancestry intertwined with the divine, entrusted to their silence. There are tantalizing hints in the surviving fragments of Egyptian history. Certain temple inscriptions refer to a book of life or a hidden lineage entrusted to the gods. Scholars debate their meaning. Were they metaphors for spiritual truth or references to an actual codex? The possibility that they point to Cleopatra's Bloodline Codex is a question that remains open. The codex would have been more than a record. It would have been a map, a guide to a lineage that transcended time. And it could have been encoded the names of her ancestors, the symbols of their divine claim, and perhaps even instructions for safeguarding that knowledge. To lose such a codex would be to lose the key to understanding Cleopatra herself. Some legends speak of hidden books buried with rulers, sealed in tombs and chambers. These codices were not meant to be opened until the right time, until a rightful heir could read them. If Cleopatra possessed such a book, it may have been hidden at her death, perhaps in a secret chamber beneath Alexandria, to protect it from Rome and the centuries that followed. The Bloodline Codex transforms Cleopatra's story from a tale of politics and romance into a story of guardianship. It suggests that she was not merely a queen defending her throne, but a protector of a truth too powerful for the world to see. Her alliances, her rituals, and her strategies could all have been part of a plan to protect that codex. The search for such a codex is not a matter of certainty. It is a matter of possibility. History is filled with lost books and hidden records. The Library of Alexandria, for all its grandeur, was destroyed. Temples were ransacked, inscriptions defaced. If a codex existed, it could have been lost, hidden, or still waiting to be discovered. The Bloodline Codex is more than an archaeological mystery. It is a symbol of the hidden layers of history. It represents the possibility that Cleopatra's reign was shaped by a secret deeper than politics or power. It represents the idea that her lineage and the truth of her heritage was guarded with the care of a queen who understood the weight of history. For those who follow the trail of Cleopatra's story, the Codex is a beacon. It is a promise that somewhere in the ruins of Alexandria, in the whispers of priests, or in the fragments of inscriptions, there may still be a trace of the truth. It is the possibility that the mystery of her bloodline is not lost forever. The Bloodline Codex challenges the way we see history. It reminds us that truth is not always written in plain sight. Some truths are buried, encoded, and preserved in silence. For Cleopatra, the Codex may have been her most precious inheritance, a secret she carried to her death. As we move deeper into the search for Cleopatra's hidden lineage, the Bloodline Codex stands as a symbol of the mystery we chase. It is both a possibility and a question that beckons us to look beyond the surface of history, into the heart of a queen who ruled in shadow. And beyond the possibility of a codex lies a greater truth, that Cleopatra's story is not yet finished. Her bloodline, her secrets, and her legacy may still speak to us from the hidden chambers of history, if only we learn how to listen. Rome was never merely a distant power to Cleopatra. It was an ever-present force shaping her destiny. The relationship between Egypt and Rome was a delicate balance of diplomacy, strategy, and subtle war. Yet beneath the surface of political maneuvering lay a deeper web of conspiracy, one that may have sought to control Cleopatra's reign and conceal her truth. By the time Cleopatra took the throne, Rome was the dominant power in the Mediterranean. Julius Caesar's arrival in Egypt was more than a meeting of leaders. It was the opening of a new chapter where Egypt's fate would be entangled with Rome's ambitions. Cleopatra understood this reality better than most, and she maneuvered with precision, turning her alliances into both survival and power. But Rome's interest in Egypt was not purely political. It was strategic, economic, and symbolic. Egypt was the breadbasket of the Mediterranean, rich in grain, treasures, and knowledge. Its control meant immense influence. Cleopatra's alliance with Caesar, and later with Mark Antony, was an act of defiance and a calculated bid to preserve her independence. The Roman conspiracy was not the work of one man, but of an entire system. Senators, generals, and spies operated in the shadows, seeking to shape events in ways the public could not see. Cleopatra's very presence in Rome, her image, her politics, her bloodline, became part of this hidden war. Rome's leaders were wary of her. They feared not just her ambition, but the possibility that her lineage carried something dangerous, a claim that could challenge Rome's own power. There are hints in Roman writings that Cleopatra's ancestry was part of the reason for this fear. Ancient sources mention her divine status, her connections to gods, and her legitimacy as pharaoh. But they do not explain why such claims were so dangerous to Rome. Could it have been because they pointed to a bloodline Rome could not control? If so, a conspiracy to suppress that truth would have been inevitable. The Roman political machine was expert at concealment. Decisions were made in private councils, alliances formed in whispers, and truths hidden behind layers of diplomacy. Cleopatra's fate, intertwined with Caesar and Antony, was shaped in those hidden chambers of power. Her story became a casualty of politics, altered in records and silenced in history. One theory among historians is that Rome deliberately erased evidence of Cleopatra's lineage. By controlling the narrative of her reign, Rome could strip her of her divine claim and reframe her story. This was not merely propaganda. It was an act of historical erasure. To erase her lineage was to erase a claim to power that could endure beyond her death. There's also the question of her alliances. Caesar and Antony were not merely lovers. They were political partners. Their union had implications far beyond romance. It was a challenge to Rome's authority. Cleopatra's bloodline, preserved through such alliances, could have been a direct threat to Rome. For this reason, some scholars suggest that the Roman conspiracy extended to ensuring that her lineage was forgotten. The conspiracy may also explain the secrecy surrounding her burial. If Rome feared the truth of her ancestry, ensuring that her tomb and any records within it were lost would have been a priority. A hidden tomb would be not just a resting place, but a sealed secret, the final act in a political conspiracy to bury her truth forever. Roman records of Cleopatra's reign are themselves suspiciously incomplete. Much of what we know comes from accounts written decades later by those loyal to Rome. These accounts emphasize her relationships with Roman leaders and portray her as a seductress, while glossing over her political achievements and the deeper significance of her rule. This selective storytelling is consistent with a larger conspiracy to control history. The Roman conspiracy is not merely a historical theory, it is a pattern. Rome was skilled at rewriting history to preserve its own power. Conquered rulers were often recast as villains, their legacies redefined to serve the victors. Cleopatra's story fits this pattern perfectly. A powerful queen reduced to myth, her lineage obscured, her truth buried. For those who seek Cleopatra's hidden lineage, the Roman conspiracy is a key piece of the puzzle. It suggests that the silence surrounding her ancestry is not an accident, but the result of deliberate action. It implies that her bloodline, and perhaps the truth she carried, was deemed too dangerous to survive in public memory. The conspiracy transforms Cleopatra's story into something larger than politics. It becomes a tale of truth suppressed by power, of history rewritten to erase a lineage. And in that suppression lies the deeper mystery we pursue, a mystery that may be hidden in the ruins of Alexandria, in lost chambers, or in a codex sealed away from the world. To uncover the Roman conspiracy is to confront the reality that history is shaped not only by what is preserved, but also by what is erased. It is to understand that Cleopatra's reign was fought not only in battles and alliances, but in silence and concealment. The Roman conspiracy invites us to see Cleopatra not merely as a queen defeated, but as a ruler whose legacy was deliberately hidden. It is a reminder that her story is not fully told, that her bloodline may still lie buried beneath the layers of history Rome sought to erase. As we delve deeper into Cleopatra's world, the conspiracy of Rome becomes a shadow that stretches across centuries. It shapes the questions we ask, the paths we follow, and the mysteries we seek to uncover. For in the conspiracy lies the possibility that Cleopatra's lineage, her true legacy, was the greatest secret of all. And in that possibility lies the next chapter of our journey. Symbols are more than art. They are language, a language that transcends time. In Cleopatra's Egypt, symbols were power. They were woven into architecture, art, coinage, and ritual. They carried meaning beyond words, a hidden code only the initiated could read. For those who seek Cleopatra's hidden lineage, these symbols may be the most revealing clues of all. Cleopatra understood the potency of symbols. She was a ruler who carefully curated her image, not just as a queen, but as a living embodiment of divine heritage. Her likeness was carved on statues and minted on coins, each detail chosen to speak of power, divinity, and continuity. These were not random acts of propaganda. They were deliberate messages encoded in a language of secrecy. Among the most significant symbols of her reign is the image of Isis, the Egyptian goddess of motherhood, magic, and the throne. Cleopatra often presented herself as Isis incarnate, aligning her rule with the divine. This identification was more than religious devotion. It was a claim of legitimacy, a coded declaration of her sacred ancestry. To those who knew how to read it, it spoke of a lineage that traced back to the gods themselves. The serpent, another recurring symbol in her imagery, also carries hidden meaning. In Egyptian mythology, the Uraeus serpent was a protector of kings and queens, symbolizing divine authority and the power to protect the throne. Cleopatra's use of the serpent was not merely ornamental. It was a deliberate emblem, possibly signaling knowledge of her sacred heritage and her right to the throne. Coins from her reign are another form of encoded message. They bear her portrait alongside symbols chosen with precision: diadems, crowns, and the uraeus. Each element was a statement. They were public declarations of her divine status, her claim to rule, and perhaps, if one reads between the lines, hints of a deeper secret about her bloodline. Architecture, too, served as a symbolic language. Temples restored under her name were more than religious sites. They were political statements. The placement of statues, the inscriptions carved in stone, the orientation of sanctuaries, all were designed to communicate meaning to those attuned to their language. The temples may themselves be monuments not only to power, but to concealment. This symbolic language was part of a broader strategy. Cleopatra ruled in an age when Egypt's history was a living memory, and symbols were a way to encode that memory. For a queen who may have carried a secret lineage, symbols could be the safest way to pass it on. Unlike scrolls or codices that could be destroyed, symbols endure, carved in stone, minted in coin, immortalized in art. The symbolism of her reign extends to the very way she presented herself. Ancient sources speak of Cleopatra's deliberate use of appearance and ritual. Her clothing, her jewelry, her manner of speaking, all were calculated acts of political theater. But they may also have been acts of coded communication, a silent declaration to those who could interpret her message. Among historians, there is growing recognition that symbols were central to Cleopatra's rule. They were her language of secrecy. To decode them is to step closer to understanding not only her reign, but what she may have guarded above all else, her bloodline. One of the most intriguing symbols is the concept of the hidden throne. References in ancient texts speak of a throne not seen by the public, a throne reserved for the initiated. For Cleopatra, such a concept could have been both literal and symbolic, a throne representing her divine inheritance, guarded by secrecy. The symbol she left behind may point toward this hidden reality. Symbols also have the power to survive centuries where words are lost. Statues stand long after inscriptions fade. Coins circulate across empires. Temples endure even as cities crumble. Cleopatra's symbols, carefully crafted and placed, could carry her most guarded truth across time, waiting for those who know how to read them. For modern seekers of history, these symbols are both a map and a challenge. They invite us to look beyond the surface, to question what we see, and to search for hidden meanings. They ask us to consider, what was Cleopatra trying to protect? What secret lay behind her deliberate image? The symbols of Cleopatra's reign are not mere relics of the past. They are keys. They could unlock the mystery of her lineage, revealing a truth lost to time. But to unlock them requires more than archaeology. It requires understanding the language of secrecy, the codes of power, and the rituals of a queen who ruled at the edge of legend. Symbols were the silent language of Cleopatra's reign. They were her message to the future, a language she entrusted to stone, coin, and ritual. They were a promise that even in silence, her truth could endure. The search for that truth, hidden in symbols, is a journey into the heart of her reign. It is a journey that demands patience, insight, and an openness to seeing history not as it is told, but as it may be hidden. And as we follow these symbols deeper, we draw closer to the heart of the mystery. The possibility that Cleopatra's hidden lineage is written not in scrolls, but in the enduring language of symbolism. The pursuit of Cleopatra's truth has not been the work of kings or queens. It has been the work of scholars. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, linguists, and dreamers have dedicated their lives to piecing together her story. They sift through fragments of history, decipher symbols, and follow whispers left by time. Their work is a pursuit not only of history, but of a deeper mystery, the hidden lineage of Cleopatra. Scholarship is a journey of patience. It is not measured in dramatic discoveries, but in years of painstaking research, excavation, and interpretation. For Cleopatra's story, the path has been especially elusive. Alexandria, the heart of her world, lies buried beneath centuries of destruction, making every clue precious and every discovery a step closer to her truth. The pursuit begins with ancient texts. Roman historians such as Plutarch, Dio Cassius, and Cassius Dio wrote of Cleopatra, yet their accounts are framed by bias. They depict her as a seductress, a manipulator, and a tragic figure, a portrayal that obscures the complexity of her reign. Scholars must read these accounts critically, separating propaganda from possibility, and asking what Rome had to gain from silencing her real story. Beyond texts lies archaeology. Every dig in Egypt is a journey into layers of memory. Temples, tombs, inscriptions, coins, each fragment tells a part of the story. Yet Cleopatra's trail is one of deliberate concealment. Evidence of her reign is scattered, hidden in plain sight among ruins, misinterpreted or overlooked. The challenge for scholars is not only to find these fragments, but to decode them. Decoding Cleopatra is a task that demands multidisciplinary expertise. Egyptologists, classicists, linguists, and historians must work together to reconstruct her world. This collaboration is both a strength and a necessity, for her story lies at the crossroads of cultures, Greek, Egyptian, and Roman. Her reign was a tapestry woven from these threads, and scholars must unravel them carefully to understand her truth. The scholar's pursuit is also an act of courage. To challenge established history is to face resistance. Theories of Cleopatra's hidden lineage are not universally accepted. They sit at the edge of historical inquiry, where certainty fades and speculation begins. But it is in this uncertain space that discovery is born. Scholars who follow that space do so with the knowledge that history is a living conversation, not a fixed narrative. There's also the question of resources. Excavations cost time and money. Scholars must persuade institutions, governments, and the public that the search for Cleopatra's hidden truth is worth pursuing. This makes their work not only a scholarly quest, but a fight for recognition, a battle to keep the mystery alive in an age of expedience. Technology has transformed the scholar's pursuit in recent decades. Ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, and digital reconstruction allow researchers to see beneath the surface of cities like Alexandria without disturbing them. These tools open possibilities once thought impossible, mapping buried structures, identifying hidden chambers, and reading inscriptions long lost to decay. The scholar's pursuit now blends ancient wisdom with modern innovation. But even with technology, the work remains painstaking. Discoveries often come in fragments: a shard of pottery, an inscription half erased by time, a coin with a faint image. Each fragment is a piece of a larger puzzle. For scholars, these fragments are more than relics. They are whispers from the past, clues that could point toward Cleopatra's hidden lineage. The pursuit is also shaped by interpretation. Two scholars may look at the same fragment and see different meanings. This is the nature of history. It is not a single truth, but a dialogue between evidence and interpretation. For Cleopatra, whose life was cloaked in symbolism and secrecy, this dialogue is especially complex. Every discovery must be weighed against centuries of silence and concealment. Some scholars have devoted their careers to the idea that Cleopatra's lineage was hidden intentionally. They point to inconsistencies in Roman accounts, symbolic references in art, and the secrecy surrounding her burial as evidence of a deliberate concealment. Others argue that such ideas remain speculative. This debate itself is part of the scholar's pursuit, a reminder that history is a field of questions, not answers. The scholar's pursuit is not limited to dusty archives or remote digs. It is also a pursuit of perspective. To understand Cleopatra, scholars must step beyond the ancient world and examine the modern forces that shape her story. How has history been written about her? What biases have influenced her portrayal? This meta-analysis is essential to separating fact from myth. There is a human element to the scholar's pursuit. Behind every excavation, every paper, every lecture, there is a passion for uncovering truth. Scholars are not detached observers. They are seekers. They share a curiosity that drives them to explore not only Cleopatra's reign, but the deeper mystery of her lineage. Their pursuit is an act of devotion to history itself. The pursuit of Cleopatra's hidden lineage is a race against time. Alexandria continues to change, modern cities expand, and ancient ruins fade further into obscurity. Every year that passes makes the search more urgent. For scholars, the stakes are high. To find the truth is to rewrite history. To lose it is to let silence endure. This pursuit is also a pursuit of meaning. Cleopatra's story is not just about a queen. It is about how history is preserved, concealed, and interpreted. It is about understanding the power of secrecy and the ways in which truth can be hidden across centuries. For scholars, the search for her lineage is a search for the essence of history itself. The scholar's pursuit reminds us that history is never complete. It is a living process shaped by those who seek it. In the case of Cleopatra, that pursuit is more than academic. It is a journey into mystery. It is a journey that asks us to listen to the whispers of the past, to follow the fragments of evidence, and to question what we think we know. In the end, the scholar's pursuit is a testament to the enduring power of Cleopatra's story. It is proof that her reign, her lineage, and her secrets still inspire the search for truth. And it is a reminder that the deeper the silence, the greater the story waiting to be uncovered. As we move forward, the pursuit of Cleopatra's hidden lineage leads us to a new threshold, the point where history meets mystery, and where scholars become seekers of a truth that may lie forever beyond reach. Hidden knowledge is always dangerous. It carries power, and power demands control. For centuries, archives have been both the keepers of truth and the prisons of secrets. The forbidden archives are places where history is sealed away, inaccessible to most, guarded by authority and protected by silence. For Cleopatra's lineage, such archives may hold the final pieces of the puzzle. The idea of forbidden archives is woven deeply into the history of Egypt. Ancient temples contained sanctuaries of knowledge, accessible only to priests and rulers. These were not mere libraries. They were guarded repositories, filled with records written on papyrus scrolls, etched in stone, and encrypted in sacred symbols. They held the secrets of ancestry, of divine law, and of power itself. For Cleopatra, the preservation of her lineage would have been paramount. If her bloodline was as extraordinary as whispers suggest, then the knowledge of it could be dangerous in the wrong hands. The existence of forbidden archives offers a plausible reason why such a truth might never have been revealed. These archives would have been designed to conceal, not to share. History offers glimpses of such places. Ancient Egypt had the Temple of Thoth in Hermopolis, repositories of sacred writings, and halls of records in the Great Library of Alexandria. Some scholars suggest there were hidden chambers within these institutions, vaults reserved for the most guarded secrets of the state and the divine. Cleopatra, who ruled in the heart of this world, would have known how to use such a system. The concept of a forbidden archive is more than physical. It is symbolic, a reminder that knowledge itself can be restricted. In every civilization, there are records that are kept from public view, either because they're too powerful, too dangerous, or too sensitive. For a queen like Cleopatra, who walked the line between mortal rule and divine claim, the archives could have been both a shield and a weapon. There is evidence to suggest that some records of Cleopatra's reign were indeed suppressed. Roman historians rarely mention certain events in her rule, and references to her ancestry are sparse and ambiguous. Could this be a sign that her lineage was recorded somewhere, but hidden deliberately? The possibility of forbidden archives lends weight to such theories. Throughout history, rulers have created secret libraries and archives. These are guarded not only by walls, but by ritual. Access was granted to few, and the knowledge contained within was considered sacred. For Cleopatra, whose reign was defined by both political strategy and symbolic power, such an archive could have been the ultimate safeguard of her legacy. The location of such archives is a matter of speculation. Alexandria, as the center of learning in the ancient world, is a prime candidate. The Library of Alexandria, one of history's greatest repositories of knowledge, was destroyed, but not necessarily entirely. Some historians argue that parts of it may have been preserved in hidden chambers, secret vaults beneath the city. If Cleopatra's lineage was recorded there, it may still be concealed somewhere beneath the ruins. The notion of forbidden archives extends beyond Alexandria. Temples across Egypt contained hidden chambers, some of which remain undiscovered. The Ptolemaic dynasty had access to these spaces. For Cleopatra, they could have been sanctuaries for her most precious secret, the Bloodline Codex, or other records confirming her divine claim. Such places would have been protected by secrecy and perhaps even by curses designed to ward off intruders. Forbidden archives are also a feature of myth. Many traditions speak of secret libraries, of records sealed away until a destined time. In Egypt, this mythic tradition was strong. The idea that knowledge could be guarded for centuries, awaiting the one who could read its signs. Cleopatra's lineage, if concealed in such a place, would become part of that tradition. The search for forbidden archives is both tantalizing and frustrating. For archaeologists and historians, they are the ultimate prize, the possibility of unlocking history's most guarded secrets. But they're also a reminder of the limits of human knowledge. Some archives may remain hidden forever, their entrances sealed by time, destruction, or deliberate concealment. The existence of forbidden archives raises deeper questions about history itself. What is the cost of hidden knowledge? What truths have been lost to secrecy? Cleopatra's reign suggests that some truths were considered too powerful to be revealed. If her lineage was among them, then the archives that conceal it are a testament to the lengths rulers will go to protect their secrets. For those who seek Cleopatra's story, the idea of forbidden archives is a powerful motivator. It transforms the search from a quest for fragments of history into a journey into the unknown. It invites us to question not only what we know, but how we know it, and what may have been deliberately hidden from us. The forbidden archives may hold more than records. They could contain artifacts, codices, and symbols, all pieces of a puzzle pointing to the truth of Cleopatra's heritage. To uncover them would be to unlock a chapter of history that has remained sealed for over 2 millennia. But the search for such archives is not easy. Alexandria has been transformed over centuries by conquest, destruction, and rebuilding. Ancient entrances have been buried, sealed, or destroyed. Even if forbidden archives exist, finding them would require extraordinary resources, knowledge, and perhaps a measure of fortune. The pursuit of Cleopatra's forbidden archives is more than archaeology. It is an act of faith. Faith that history is not finished, that the past still speaks, and that secrets can survive time. It is a belief that beneath layers of earth and memory lies a truth that has endured centuries of silence. Forbidden archives remind us that history is shaped by both revelation and concealment. Cleopatra's story, her reign, her lineage, her legacy, may itself be part of a hidden archive. To search for it is to join a long tradition of seekers who look beyond the known, into the realm of possibility. As we stand at the threshold of discovery, the forbidden archives invite us to imagine what lies beyond. They remind us that Cleopatra's story is not just about a queen of Egypt, but about the nature of history itself, a story of secrets, silence, and the enduring pursuit of truth. The question remains, if such archives exist, what would they reveal? And would the world be ready to hear it? History does not speak in clear voices. It whispers. These whispers are carried in fragments, in ruined walls, fading inscriptions, and stories passed down through generations. They are the echoes of events long vanished, the faint traces of truths buried beneath the weight of time. For Cleopatra, these whispers may hold the key to her hidden lineage, a secret preserved not in scrolls, but in the quiet endurance of memory. To hear these whispers is to listen closely to the fragments of the past. Egypt's ruins are full of them. The temples of Philae, the corridors of Karnak, the weathered statues of Alexandria, each bears a fragment of a story. These fragments speak of a time when knowledge was sacred and truth was guarded. They hint at a history Cleopatra may have inherited and protected. Whispers through time are not bound to stone. They live in the stories passed through generations. In Egypt, oral tradition has preserved fragments of history that survive outside formal records. Priests, scribes, and storytellers carried knowledge through centuries, passing it in hushed tones to those deemed worthy. Cleopatra, who ruled at the intersection of oral and written tradition, would have understood the power of such whispers. These whispers also reach us in the distortions of history. Roman accounts of Cleopatra are clouded by politics and bias. What they leave unsaid, or distort, can be as telling as what they record. Within those silences lie the whispers of a lineage erased, of a truth deliberately hidden. The work of historians is to listen to what is not said and to follow those whispers into the past. Whispers through time are fragile. They can be lost to destruction, forgotten in silence, or dismissed as legend. Yet they endure. Egypt is a land shaped by memory, where the past is never truly gone. The Nile, the desert, the stones themselves carry echoes of history. For those who listen, the whispers of Cleopatra's world are still audible. Some whispers come in the form of riddles and symbols. Ancient inscriptions, ritual carvings, and mythic imagery are often cryptic, not meant to be read by everyone. These encoded messages have survived millennia, offering clues to those who understand their language. Cleopatra's own reign was steeped in such symbolic whispering, a language designed to conceal as much as to reveal. The whispers are also found in the names of places and people. Alexandria itself was more than a city. It was a living monument to a dynasty, a name that carries meaning across centuries. Cleopatra's own name, passed down through history, is a whisper of power and mystery. It invites us to ask, what has been preserved and what has been lost? Whispers through time are not static. They shift and change with each telling. The story of Cleopatra has evolved over centuries, shaped by poets, historians, archaeologists, and storytellers. Each generation hears her story differently, filtering it through its own values, biases, and imagination. In this way, the whispers of Cleopatra are alive, changing as they travel through time. For seekers of her hidden lineage, these whispers are a map. They guide us toward places where history and myth intersect, where silence and evidence meet. They encourage us to follow subtle traces, a symbol carved in stone, a fragment of a codex, a shadow in the historical record. These traces may lead to the truth that Cleopatra guarded. Whispers through time also challenge the way we think about history. They remind us that history is not a fixed record, but a living conversation between past and present. Cleopatra's story is not complete. It is an unfinished dialogue. The whispers invite us to join that dialogue, to question what we know, and to seek what has been hidden. There is a poetic element to these whispers. They remind us that history is not only written in facts, but in memory and silence. Cleopatra's reign, her alliances, her symbols, her secrecy, can be seen as part of that poetic legacy. Her hidden lineage, if it exists, is a whisper that has traveled across centuries, waiting to be heard. The challenge is to listen without distorting. To follow whispers through time is to navigate between history and legend, between evidence and interpretation. It is a delicate task, requiring humility and care. For Cleopatra, whose life was shaped by secrecy, This task is especially profound. These whispers are also a call to preservation. The sites, artifacts, and inscriptions that carry them are vulnerable to destruction. Modern development, environmental decay, and political instability threaten the fragile threads of history. Preserving the whispers of Cleopatra's world is a race against time. The whispers through time remind us of the fragility of truth. They suggest that what we know is always partial, and what is hidden may still be waiting to be discovered. Cleopatra's hidden lineage is not only a historical question, it is a challenge to our understanding of history itself. For those who listen, the whispers are an invitation to look deeper, to question more profoundly, and to embrace the mystery of history. Cleopatra's story is not a closed book. It is a living narrative, carried forward in whispers that span millennia. As we follow these whispers, we begin to see history not as a fixed record, but as an ongoing conversation. Cleopatra's lineage and the secrets she carried remain part of that conversation. The whispers through time urge us to listen, to seek, and to imagine what lies beyond the silence. And in that silence lies the promise of discovery. The search for Cleopatra's truth is a puzzle unlike any other. It is a puzzle built of fragments of history, fragments of myth, fragments of silence. Each clue is a piece, and yet the complete picture remains elusive. The final puzzle is not just about finding her lineage. It is about understanding the deeper truth she may have carried. History is rarely a straightforward narrative. It is layered, constructed, and often incomplete. Cleopatra's story exemplifies this complexity. She lived in a time of extraordinary change, where empires clashed, secrets were guarded, and truth was shaped by those in power. The puzzle of her lineage lies at the heart of this web, a question that has persisted for centuries. The pieces of this puzzle are scattered across disciplines. Archaeology offers one set of clues, the artifacts, coins, inscriptions, and ruins left behind. Linguistics offers another, the language of symbols and the hidden meanings in ancient texts. History provides a third layer, the narrative shaped by political power and the silence of omission. Together, these form a mosaic that scholars continue to reconstruct. But the final puzzle is not solved merely by gathering evidence. It demands interpretation. Each fragment must be understood in its context, each symbol deciphered within the culture that created it. Cleopatra's lineage, if hidden, was hidden with intention. Decoding that intention requires not only facts, but insight into the motives of those who sought to conceal her truth. One of the most tantalizing aspects of this puzzle is the deliberate gaps in history. The absence of records is itself a clue. Roman historians carefully shaped her legacy, focusing on her alliances and reducing her image to that of a seductress. The silence about her ancestry, the omission of certain events, and the destruction of her tomb all speak to a story that was suppressed. These gaps are not empty spaces. They're the missing pieces of the puzzle. Another part of the puzzle lies in symbolism. Cleopatra's use of divine imagery, her representation as Isis, the symbols on her coinage, these were not accidental. They may have been deliberate markers, a coded message for those who could understand it. For those who look closely, these symbols are a key to the hidden lineage. They are puzzle pieces that speak in silence. The final puzzle also involves location. Cleopatra's Egypt was rich in sacred spaces, temples, and libraries. Alexandria was a city of knowledge, with its great library and secret vaults. These places were repositories not only of information, but of power. If Cleopatra's lineage was recorded anywhere, it would be in such places, hidden in a chamber, sealed in a codex, or preserved in ritual. The puzzle becomes even more complex when we consider the role of conspiracy. The theory of a Roman conspiracy to erase Cleopatra's lineage suggests deliberate action to destroy evidence. If true, this means the final puzzle is not simply about discovery, but about uncovering what was intentionally hidden. It is a puzzle layered with both creation and destruction. The process of solving this puzzle is as much about questions as answers. Every discovery raises new mysteries. A coin with unusual markings leads to questions about symbolism. An incomplete inscription leads to theories about secrecy. A buried temple suggests the existence of archives, yet undiscovered. Each clue adds depth to the puzzle, but also deepens the mystery. For those who seek Cleopatra's hidden lineage, the puzzle is both a challenge and an invitation. It is a challenge to sift through centuries of history and deception. It is an invitation to imagine the reality behind the myths, to piece together a truth that may have been deliberately scattered. The final puzzle asks us not only to reconstruct history, but to question the nature of history itself. There is also a personal element to the puzzle. Cleopatra's story is not just the story of a queen, but the story of a human being who lived in extraordinary circumstances. Her alliances, her symbolism, her secrecy, all speak to her as a person who understood the fragility of power and the weight of legacy. The final puzzle is an attempt to understand her as both ruler and woman. The puzzle is compounded by the passage of time. Over 2,000 years have passed since Cleopatra ruled Egypt. Time has eroded not only the physical traces of her reign, but also the collective memory. What remains are fragments, whispers, and shadows. The final puzzle is a race against time, to find the pieces before they vanish forever. The stakes of this puzzle are high. If Cleopatra's hidden lineage were to be revealed, it would not simply rewrite her biography. It could change our understanding of history itself. It would challenge the narrative shaped by centuries of silence and conspiracy. The final puzzle is not merely academic. It is transformational. Solving the puzzle requires more than scholarship. It requires imagination. It demands that we think beyond the fragments and envision the whole. What would Cleopatra's lineage mean in the broader context of history? How would it reshape the story of Egypt, of Rome, of power itself? These are the questions that drive the pursuit. The puzzle also carries a caution. History is never absolute. The pieces we find are interpreted through our own lens, shaped by our culture, biases, and assumptions. The final puzzle reminds us that truth is not a fixed destination, but a journey of exploration. It is a journey in which the process of seeking is as important as the answer. In this way, the puzzle of Cleopatra's lineage becomes a metaphor for history itself. History is constructed of fragments, shaped by those who record it, and haunted by what is missing. Cleopatra's story is emblematic of this truth, a story built of evidence, shaped by silence, and preserved in mystery. The final puzzle invites us to become participants in history. To search for Cleopatra's lineage is to engage with the past in an intimate way. It is to walk alongside the scholars, the archaeologists, and the seekers who have devoted themselves to this question. It is to recognize that history is not something fixed, but something we help shape. As we stand before this final puzzle, we realize that it is not a puzzle that can be solved once and for all. Cleopatra's story is a living enigma. Her hidden lineage, if it exists, is a truth that may never be fully revealed. But in the pursuit of it, we keep her story alive. And perhaps that is the true answer to the puzzle. Not a single truth, but the enduring quest to uncover it. Every great story carries a turning point, a moment when the pieces come together and the hidden truth emerges. For Cleopatra's lineage, The last revelation is that moment. It is the culmination of centuries of whispers, fragments, and scholarship. It is the point where mystery meets discovery and history meets possibility. The last revelation is not a single document, coin, or artifact. It is the convergence of evidence, a mosaic of symbols, texts, ruins, and interpretations that together point towards something extraordinary. For Cleopatra, whose life was marked by calculated concealment, the revelation may not be a bold unveiling, but a quiet confirmation, a truth whispered rather than proclaimed. Throughout history, revelations have changed the way we see the past. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone unlocked the language of ancient Egypt. The excavation of Troy redefined our understanding of myth. The last revelation of Cleopatra's lineage would be equally transformative, not only for Egyptology, but for history itself. It would rewrite the narrative of her reign and reframe her legacy. This revelation, however, may not arrive as a single moment. It may emerge slowly, as scholars piece together fragments, decode symbols, and follow the traces left across millennia. It is the end of one journey and the beginning of another. The journey to integrate the revelation into the living story of history. The last revelation could take many forms. It might be an artifact buried in the sands of Egypt, discovered in the ruins of a temple or hidden chamber. It might be a lost manuscript, preserved by secrecy and time, waiting to be deciphered. It might be a symbol long misunderstood, now recognized as a key to her lineage. Each possibility carries profound implications. For those who have followed Cleopatra's story, the last revelation is both hope and challenge. It is hope that the truth can still be found, that centuries of silence may finally be broken. It is a challenge because revelations often demand that we rethink what we know. They force us to question established narratives and confront uncomfortable truths. The nature of the last revelation is deeply tied to Cleopatra's own reign. She was a queen who lived by revelation and concealment in equal measure. Her alliances, her symbols, her rituals, all were acts of disclosure and secrecy. In seeking her last revelation, we follow the very path she carved, moving between what is shown and what is hidden. One possibility is that the last revelation is not a discovery at all, but an understanding. It could be the recognition that Cleopatra's lineage was never meant to be revealed openly, that it was her greatest secret, preserved in symbolism and silence. If so, the revelation lies not in what we uncover, but in what we come to understand about her reign and her legacy. The last revelation is also a test of perspective. History is shaped by those who interpret it. To claim a revelation is to step into the role of interpreter, to weigh evidence and speak truth. For Cleopatra, whose story has been shaped by centuries of interpretation, this means that her last revelation may forever remain a matter of debate. There is a poetic dimension to the last revelation. It is not the end of the story, but its transformation. It changes the way we see Cleopatra, her Egypt, and her place in history. It is a moment when the past speaks with clarity and the silence of centuries is pierced by understanding. The last revelation also carries a human dimension. For those who have devoted their lives to Cleopatra's story, scholars, archaeologists, seekers, it is a vindication of years of pursuit. It is proof that their whispers have been heard, their fragments have been seen, and their search has meaning. But revelations have consequences. They reshape not only history, but identity. Cleopatra's hidden lineage, if revealed, would transform the way we see Egypt, the Ptolemaic dynasty, and perhaps even the wider story of ancient civilization. It would challenge the narratives we have inherited and demand a rethinking of history itself. The last revelation may also be a call to reflection. It asks us to consider how much of history is hidden and how much is shaped by those who hold the power to preserve or erase it. Cleopatra's story is not only about the past. It is a reminder that truth is fragile and history is often a matter of secrecy. For modern seekers, the last revelation is a challenge to imagination. It asks us to envision what history might hold, beyond what is written and what is preserved. It invites us to see Cleopatra not just as a figure of legend, but as a keeper of a secret that may transcend time itself. The last revelation is a reminder that history is not static. It evolves with each discovery, each interpretation, each question we ask. Cleopatra's lineage, hidden or revealed, is part of that evolving story. To reach the last revelation is to embrace history as a living process, one that continues to unfold. There is an element of mystery that will always remain. Even with the last revelation, Cleopatra will still be a figure cloaked in enigma. Her lineage, her choices, and her legacy will continue to provoke questions. But that is the nature of history. It is a journey without a final destination, a puzzle that invites us to keep seeking. The last revelation is more than an end. It is an opening. It opens the door to new possibilities, to deeper understanding, and to the continuation of Cleopatra's story. It transforms the search into a legacy, the legacy of seeking truth, of listening to whispers, and of preserving memory. Ultimately, the last revelation is a testament to the power of history. It shows us that the past is not lost, but waits in fragments, symbols, and whispers, waiting for those who dare to listen. Cleopatra's hidden lineage, whether found or forever concealed, is part of that enduring quest. And perhaps that is the greatest revelation of all, that the search itself is history's truest inheritance. Legacy is what remains when time has passed. It is the echo of a life, a reign, or a secret carried forward into memory. For Cleopatra, legacy is a living thing, shaped by history, myth, and the possibility of a hidden lineage. The legacy of her hidden lineage is not simply about blood or ancestry. It is about what her story continues to mean for the world. Cleopatra's reign was marked by power and paradox. She was both queen and enigma, ruler and symbol. Her lineage, if truly concealed, would add another layer to her legacy, a truth hidden not by accident, but by design. This possibility transforms her legacy into something more than history. It becomes a living question, a mystery that continues to shape how we see her. The legacy of a hidden lineage is profound because it changes the way history is told. History is not simply a record of facts. It is a narrative shaped by what is remembered and what is forgotten. Cleopatra's story has always been filtered through layers of interpretation, shaped by centuries of cultural bias. A hidden lineage would be another layer, a secret that alters the meaning of her reign. Legacy is also about influence. Cleopatra's life has inspired countless stories, myths, and works of art. From Shakespeare's plays to modern films, her image has been shaped and reshaped across centuries. The possibility of a hidden lineage adds a new dimension to that influence, a whisper of a truth that could transform her image once more. The legacy of the hidden lineage is not confined to Egypt. It extends across the world, touching history, politics, and identity. Cleopatra's life was at the crossroads of civilizations, Greek, Egyptian, and Roman. Her lineage, concealed or revealed, carries implications for how these histories intertwine. It challenges us to reconsider the connections between cultures and the way power is passed through generations. Legacy is also a matter of secrecy. Some of history's greatest legacies are those kept hidden. They are preserved in symbols, rituals, and stories whispered through generations. Cleopatra's hidden lineage, if it exists, is a legacy of secrecy itself. It is a testament to the power of knowledge kept safe, of truths guarded across centuries. The concept of legacy extends beyond the individual. Cleopatra's lineage is part of the legacy of Egypt itself. Egypt is a land of memory, where the past is never entirely lost. Her lineage, if preserved in secrecy, will be part of the living heritage of a nation, a reminder that history is shaped not only by events, but by the choices of those who hold its truths. The legacy of the hidden lineage is also a challenge to modern history. It forces historians to reconsider how history is constructed. It asks whether our understanding of the past is complete or whether it is shaped by the stories we have been allowed to hear. Cleopatra's lineage, hidden, forgotten, or lost, is a reminder that history is not static but a living conversation. Legacy is carried forward by those who seek it. The scholars, archaeologists, and seekers who follow Cleopatra's trail are part of her legacy. They preserve her story by searching for its hidden parts, by listening to the whispers through time, and by questioning what has been lost. In this way, the legacy of her hidden lineage is also the legacy of those who seek truth. The legacy of Cleopatra's hidden lineage is also a moral question. It asks us what we owe to history. Do we owe it to her to uncover the truth, or to let her secret rest? It challenges the ethics of discovery, the responsibility of preservation, and the meaning of historical truth. These are questions that extend beyond Cleopatra to the way we treat history itself. Legacy is not only about the past, it is about the future. Cleopatra's story and the possibility of her hidden lineage will continue to inspire future generations. It will continue to provoke curiosity, debate, and imagination. Her legacy is not frozen in history. It is an invitation for each generation to rediscover her. The legacy of a hidden lineage is a paradox. It is both revealed and concealed. It is a truth that can transform understanding and a mystery that resists closure. This is the nature of Cleopatra's story, a legacy that lives in the balance between history and mystery. Cleopatra's own life was defined by legacy. She sought to be remembered, to secure her place in history. Her lineage, whether hidden or revealed, is part of that legacy. It is a question that she may have anticipated, a secret she may have intended to carry forward into eternity. The legacy of the hidden lineage is also a legacy of wonder. It reminds us that history is not only about facts and events, but about the mysteries that endure. Cleopatra's life is proof that the past can hold secrets powerful enough to echo across millennia. Her lineage, hidden or revealed, is part of that wonder. Legacy is sustained by memory. Cleopatra is remembered not only for her reign, but for the enduring mystery she left behind. The hidden lineage becomes part of that memory, a question that lives in the imagination, a possibility that inspires the search for truth. The legacy of the hidden lineage is a living thing. It is preserved not only in history books, but in the minds of those who continue to wonder. Cleopatra's story, her reign, her lineage, they are part of a legacy that belongs to all who listen to the whispers of the past. In the end, the legacy of Cleopatra's hidden lineage is not a final answer, but a continuing story. It is a reminder that history is never complete, and that the greatest legacy may be the search itself. For Cleopatra, the legacy of her hidden lineage may have been the ultimate testament to her reign, a secret passed through time, preserved in silence, and carried forward in the whispers of history. And that is why her story remains alive, centuries after her death, because the legacy of her hidden lineage is a mystery that will never truly end. There's a sound that travels beyond time, not the sound of voices, but the echo of memory. This is the echo of eternity. It is the resonance of lives lived, secrets kept, and stories passed down through centuries. Cleopatra's legacy, and perhaps her hidden lineage, belongs to that echo. It is a story that continues to reverberate through history. The echo of eternity is not bound by the walls of history books. It lives in the stones of temples, the sands of deserts, the shifting currents of the Nile. It is carried in art, in myth, in language. For Cleopatra, who ruled in a world defined by the interplay of the mortal and the divine, the echo of eternity was part of her reign. She understood that legacy was not only built in life, but carried forward in memory. History itself is part of the echo. What we call history is the collective memory of humanity, shaped by what survives and what we choose to remember. Cleopatra's story has survived not just because of records, but because of the echo it has left behind. Her image, queen, seductress, goddess, ruler, continues to resonate, shaped by centuries of storytelling. The echo of eternity is also about mystery. Some stories are never fully told, and some truths are never fully revealed. Cleopatra's hidden lineage may be such a truth, a secret that endures as part of the very mystery of her life. The absence of certainty transforms her story into something timeless, something that invites exploration as much as it resists closure. In many ways, Cleopatra's reign was an echo of eternity. She linked herself to the divine, to the gods of Egypt, to the traditions of the past. Her very identity was shaped by this connection. To speak of her hidden lineage is to speak of a deeper echo, one that carries meaning far beyond her lifetime, into the realms of legacy and myth. The echo of eternity is also reflected in the way we search for her truth today. Archaeologists, historians, and dreamers follow in her footsteps, drawn by the resonance of her story. Each discovery becomes part of that echo, a new voice joining a chorus that has been growing for centuries. Cleopatra's hidden lineage becomes not only a question of history, but part of a timeless search. There is something eternal about secrecy. The idea that certain truths are preserved in silence is itself part of the echo. For Cleopatra, secrecy may have been a form of preservation, a way of ensuring that the knowledge of her lineage survived in a form that could endure the centuries. The forbidden archives, the whispers through time, the missing pieces of history, all are part of that eternal echo. The echo of eternity is not always gentle. It can carry the weight of loss as much as the promise of discovery. For Egypt, much of its history has been lost to war, conquest, and destruction. The Library of Alexandria, once the great repository of knowledge, became an echo after its destruction. Cleopatra's lineage, if hidden there, would now live in that echo, a fragment of memory that survives in absence. Echoes transform over time. They shift and change with each telling. Cleopatra's story has evolved across centuries, shaped by culture, politics, art, and scholarship. The echo of her lineage is part of that evolution. Whether hidden or revealed, it continues to change the way we hear her story and the way we imagine the past. The echo of eternity is also a matter of perspective. Every listener hears it differently. To the historian, it is a record to be studied. To the poet, it is a source of inspiration. To the seeker, it is a call to discovery. Cleopatra's hidden lineage becomes part of that personal resonance, an invitation for each generation to engage with her story anew. There is a spiritual dimension to the echo of eternity. In ancient Egypt, eternity was not a distant concept, but a living reality. It was embodied in the pharaohs, in the rituals of preservation, and in the belief that memory could transcend death. Cleopatra, as queen, embraced this vision. Her lineage, concealed or revealed, would be part of that eternal cycle. The echo of eternity also challenges the way we think about truth. It reminds us that truth is not static. It changes as it travels through time, shaped by those who tell it. Cleopatra's hidden lineage, if it exists, would not be a fixed truth, but part of a living narrative, a truth that continues to evolve as it is sought and interpreted. The echo is found not only in grand discoveries, but also in small traces. A fragment of papyrus, a carved symbol, a whisper in a historian's note. These are the echoes of eternity. They are the signs that history leaves behind, the evidence that stories endure even when much is lost. Cleopatra's lineage, if hidden, would survive in such fragments. The echo of eternity reminds us that history is a conversation, not a final answer. Cleopatra's story, her reign, her lineage, her legacy, continues to speak to us. It invites us to listen closely, to interpret with care, and to acknowledge that some truths may always remain partly hidden. There's a beauty in that uncertainty. The echo of eternity carries with it the mystery of Cleopatra's life, a life that was lived in the tension between revelation and concealment. Her hidden lineage is part of that mystery, an unresolved note in a story that continues to resonate. For those who seek her truth, the echo of eternity is both guide and reward. It reminds us that the pursuit of history is not merely about answers, but about the experience of seeking. Cleopatra's lineage becomes a symbol of that journey, a question that endures because it is part of the human desire to know. The echo of eternity is the sound of history speaking across the ages. It is the voice of the past carried into the present and into the future. Cleopatra's story and the mystery of her lineage belongs to that echo. It is a reminder that some stories are never finished. In the end, the echo of eternity is Cleopatra's true legacy, not a definitive answer, but an invitation to continue listening, to continue seeking, to let her story live on in the timeless dialogue between the past and those who hear its call. And in that echo, Cleopatra's hidden lineage remains, a secret, a possibility, a question for eternity. History is never finished. It is not a closed book, but an unending quest, a conversation that stretches across time. The search for Cleopatra's hidden lineage is itself part of that quest. It is a reflection of humanity's deeper desire to uncover truth, to understand, and to connect with what came before. Reflection is the moment when we pause and consider the meaning of the journey we have taken. For Cleopatra's story, it is the moment to stand back and see what her life and the possibility of her hidden lineage teaches us. It is a moment to look at history not as a collection of facts, but as a living narrative shaped by memory, mystery, and interpretation. The unending quest is both personal and collective. Each seeker who turns toward Cleopatra's story does so in their own way. For the historian, it is a pursuit of evidence. For the poet, it is a search for meaning. For the curious mind, it is the thrill of mystery. The reflection of this quest is the recognition that the pursuit itself changes us. It shapes how we think about history, about truth, and about ourselves. Cleopatra's life was a quest in its own right. She sought power, legacy, and immortality. Her reign was marked by challenges that demanded both courage and cunning. To speak of her hidden lineage is to speak of another quest, one that may have been hers alone. It is the quest to safeguard a truth so powerful that it could change history itself. Reflection also means acknowledging the limits of knowledge. For all the archaeology, scholarship, and speculation, some truths remain just beyond reach. Cleopatra's lineage may be one such truth, a secret designed to endure beyond the reach of discovery. This does not diminish the quest, it deepens it. The unending quest is sustained by the mystery itself. There is a humility in reflection. It is the understanding that history is never absolute. Our knowledge is shaped by what survives and by what we choose to look for. Cleopatra's story reminds us that the past is fragile. The unending quest is an acceptance that history is as much about questions as it is about answers. Reflection invites us to consider what we seek when we search for history. Is it certainty or is it understanding? Cleopatra's hidden lineage challenges both. It is not simply about uncovering facts. It is about exploring meaning. The unending quest is the recognition that some truths are meant to be explored, not finalized. The reflection on Cleopatra's story is also a reflection on the nature of time. Time transforms history. It shapes memory, erodes certainty, and reframes meaning. Cleopatra's lineage, hidden or revealed, is a reminder that history is not fixed. The unending quest is to navigate that shifting terrain, to follow the traces that remain, however faint. History is shaped by those who preserve it. The reflection of the unending quest is an awareness of the responsibility we bear as keepers of history. Archaeologists, historians, storytellers, and even curious minds all participate in shaping what is remembered. Cleopatra's hidden lineage becomes a symbol of that shared responsibility, to listen to whispers, to seek truth, and to preserve the mystery. The unending quest is not only about the past, it is about the present and future. Cleopatra's story continues to speak to us because it resonates with timeless themes: power and vulnerability, legacy and secrecy, truth and myth. The reflection on her hidden lineage is a reflection on how history lives in us, in the questions we ask and the stories we tell. Reflection also reminds us that history is shaped by imagination. Cleopatra's story endures because it has been reimagined countless times. Her hidden lineage, whether revealed or forever concealed, is part of that imaginative legacy. The unending quest is to keep imagining, to keep seeking new meanings. The reflection on this journey brings us to a deeper truth, that history is not a finished story, but a living dialogue. Cleopatra's life, her reign, her secrets, her legacy, continues to invite inquiry. The unending quest is to engage with that dialogue, to keep listening to the echoes of eternity. The unending quest is sustained by mystery. Cleopatra's lineage may never be fully uncovered, but that uncertainty is part of what gives the story its power. It is the reason her story still matters, because it is not a closed chapter, but an open question that continues to inspire. Reflection is also an act of gratitude. It is gratitude for the journey, for the fragments preserved, and for the voices that have kept Cleopatra's story alive. The unending quest honors those who have sought her truth, and those who will continue to seek it in the centuries to come. The final reflection is this: history belongs to all who listen. Cleopatra's hidden lineage is part of a larger truth, that the past is not owned by any one generation. It is carried forward in memory, in research, in story. The unending quest is to be part of that continuing journey, to add our own voice to the chorus of history. In the end, the reflection on Cleopatra's hidden lineage is both an ending and a beginning. It is an ending to the journey we have taken in this story, but a beginning for all who will continue to search. History, like eternity, is endless. The unending quest is the gift of that truth. And perhaps that is Cleopatra's greatest legacy, that her story, her mystery, her hidden lineage will always be part of the unending quest for truth. There comes a moment in every great story when the noise of the past fades, leaving only a whisper that carries meaning beyond words. For Cleopatra's tale, the final whisper is the echo of all she was and all she might have been. It is the last note in a story that has traveled centuries, across empires and eras, surviving in fragments and shadows. The final whisper is not loud. It is subtle. It is found in the quiet places of history, in the fragments of papyrus buried beneath the sands, in the worn carvings on temple walls, in the fleeting symbolism of a coin. It is the sound of a secret that has endured through silence. Cleopatra's hidden lineage, whether revealed or forever concealed, belongs to that whisper. Every whisper carries the weight of choice. History chooses what to shout and what to keep silent. Cleopatra knew this. Her life was a series of deliberate choices, in politics, in alliances, in the stories she allowed to be told. To speak of her hidden lineage is to speak of her final choice, what truth to reveal and what to preserve in secrecy. The final whisper is the convergence of all questions that have been asked. Who was Cleopatra beyond the legend? What truths were erased by time and power? What secrets did she take to her grave? The whisper does not promise answers, but it holds the power to transform how we hear her story. History often leaves us with whispers rather than answers. The Library of Alexandria, once a treasury of knowledge, became a whisper after its destruction. Temples that once rang with song now stand silent in the desert. Cleopatra's hidden lineage may exist only in such whispers, a secret preserved by absence as much as by evidence. The final whisper is also an invitation. It invites us to lean closer, to listen beyond the noise of certainty and narrative. It asks us to enter the stillness of history, to hear the quiet voice of possibility. Cleopatra's lineage, hidden, imagined, or lost, becomes part of that invitation, a question that transcends her life and her time. Whispers have a peculiar power. They slip past defenses, they linger in the mind, they demand attention. Cleopatra's story has survived as a whisper across centuries, through legend, through art, through the voices of those who have sought her truth. The hidden lineage, if it exists, is the whisper within the whisper. It is history's most intimate secret. The final whisper is shaped by those who listen. Every historian, every archaeologist, every dreamer hears it differently. For some, it is a call to discovery. For others, a challenge to interpretation. For all, it is a reminder that history belongs not only to the past, but to those who engage with it. Cleopatra's whisper belongs to us as much as it belonged to her. There is a poetic truth in the idea of the final whisper. It suggests that history is not a closed story, but an ongoing conversation. Cleopatra's lineage, whether found or forever hidden, is part of that conversation. It is a whisper that continues to speak because it is never fully answered. The whisper of Cleopatra's lineage is entwined with the mystery of power. To conceal a truth is to wield influence over history itself. Cleopatra, more than most, understood the power of narrative. Her final whisper may have been a deliberate gift, a legacy preserved in silence. The final whisper is also a reflection on mortality. Time transforms voices into whispers. Empires crumble, stories fade, and what once was certain becomes uncertain. Cleopatra's story has endured as a whisper because it touches something eternal, the human need to remember, to question, to seek. In that sense, the final whisper is the heart of history. It is where fact and myth meet, where certainty dissolves into wonder. Cleopatra's hidden lineage, whether revealed or not, is a whisper that embodies this truth. It is a secret that belongs to eternity. The final whisper is a promise. It promises that the past is never silent. It promises that stories endure because they are heard again and again. Cleopatra's whisper continues because her story continues. Her lineage, hidden or revealed, is part of that promise. History teaches us that whispers can change worlds. A single fragment, a symbol, a forgotten story. Any of these can alter the way we understand ourselves and our past. Cleopatra's final whisper carries that possibility. It asks us not only to seek, but to listen. The final whisper is both an end and a beginning. It closes the story we have followed, yet opens a door to the mysteries still waiting to be discovered. Cleopatra's life and her hidden lineage are part of an endless story, a story that invites each of us to be part of its unfolding. To hear the final whisper is to become part of history. It is to acknowledge that truth is not a single discovery, but a living conversation. Cleopatra's lineage is not just her secret. It is a question she passes to us. And in answering it, we continue the quest she began. Perhaps that is the greatest part of her legacy, that Cleopatra, in life and in mystery, leaves us with a whisper that will never fade. A whisper that invites us to keep searching, to keep questioning, to keep listening. The final whisper of Cleopatra is this: history is not merely what we know, but what we dare to seek. Her hidden lineage is the eternal question, the silent challenge, the final gift. And in that whisper lies the heartbeat of eternity. Every story, no matter how complete it seems, leaves a question behind. For Cleopatra, that question is eternal. It is a question that has lingered for centuries, shaped by history, myth, and speculation. What if her lineage was never meant to be revealed? What if her greatest secret still lies hidden beneath the sands of time? The eternal question is not simply about genealogy. It is about truth, legacy, and the meaning we attach to history. Cleopatra's story, her reign, her alliances, her mysteries, has always been wrapped in questions. Her hidden lineage transforms those questions into something deeper, a question that connects the past to the present and the living to eternity. History is a conversation across time. The eternal question is the part of that conversation that remains open-ended. It is not answered by documents alone, nor by artifacts. It is answered in the act of seeking. Cleopatra's hidden lineage is the question that invites each generation to join that conversation, to become part of the story. The eternal question is shaped by possibility. It invites us to imagine what might have been, a lineage hidden not by accident, but by design. What would it mean if such a secret were true? How would it change our understanding of Cleopatra, of Egypt, of history itself? These possibilities are what give the question its power. Cleopatra herself may have understood the weight of such a question. Her reign was filled with choices designed to shape how she would be remembered. To conceal her lineage may have been her ultimate choice, a deliberate act that would leave history forever wondering. In that sense, the eternal question is her final legacy. The eternal question is also a reminder of history's limitations. Even with the most advanced archaeology, the most rigorous scholarship, some truths may remain beyond our reach. That uncertainty is not a failure of history, but part of its beauty. Cleopatra's hidden lineage becomes a symbol of history's mystery, a question meant to endure. There is an intimate quality to the eternal question. It speaks to something in all of us, the desire to uncover what is hidden, to understand the unknown. Cleopatra's story invites us into that desire. Her lineage is the door to a mystery that belongs to us all. The eternal question also challenges certainty. History often seeks definitive answers, yet the most powerful stories are those that leave room for doubt. Cleopatra's hidden lineage is one such story. It is not a closed case, but an open invitation to wonder. And that is why the question is eternal. The question is also shaped by perspective. Every generation hears it differently. For the historian, it is a research puzzle. For the philosopher, it is a question of meaning. For the dreamer, it is an inspiration. Cleopatra's hidden lineage becomes a mirror for each generation, reflecting the concerns and hopes of the time. The eternal question is about connection. It links us to Cleopatra, to Egypt, to the deep past. It asks us to bridge centuries, to listen to whispers that have traveled across time. Cleopatra's lineage, whether found or forever hidden, is part of that connection. It is a thread in the tapestry of history that binds past and present together. There is something poetic about a question that never ends. It transforms history from a record into a living thing. Cleopatra's hidden lineage is not merely a subject of study. It is a question that breathes life into history itself. It keeps her story alive because it remains unanswered. The eternal question also carries the weight of legacy. Cleopatra's life was defined by the legacy she would leave. Her lineage, hidden or revealed, is part of that legacy. It is the secret that she carries forward into eternity, the question that will follow her across the centuries. The question invites us to reflect on our own place in history. What secrets do we carry? What truths will we leave behind? Cleopatra's hidden lineage becomes a symbol of those deeper reflections, a reminder that history is as much about us as it is about those who lived before us. The eternal question is sustained by wonder. It is the wonder that keeps us searching, the sense that there is always something more to discover. Cleopatra's story endures because it is infused with wonder. The wonder of a queen, her mysteries, and the possibility of a hidden truth. The question also teaches us humility. It reminds us that no matter how much we discover, there will always be more beyond reach. Cleopatra's lineage may be one of those mysteries destined to remain unresolved, but that does not diminish its significance. Rather, it elevates it. The question itself becomes a treasure. The eternal question is a testament to the power of history. It shows us that history is not just about the past, but about our relationship to it. Cleopatra's hidden lineage is not only her story. It is our question, passed down through centuries, inviting us to seek, to wonder, and to imagine. Ultimately, the eternal question is a call to continue the journey. Cleopatra's life and legacy are part of that journey, but so too is the search for her hidden lineage. To follow that question is to step into history itself, to become part of the unending quest to understand who we are and where we come from. Perhaps that is Cleopatra's greatest gift, not the answer she gave, but the question she left behind. Her hidden lineage is the question that outlives her, the mystery that endures, the story that remains unfinished. The eternal question is the heartbeat of her legacy. It is the whisper that will never fade, the story that will always invite us to listen. Cleopatra's lineage, real or imagined, belongs to that question. And in that belonging, it becomes eternal. And so the story does not end. It continues in the minds of those who seek, in the voices of those who wonder, in the echoes of eternity. Cleopatra's final gift is the question itself, a question that will live as long as history is remembered.